got here, and that was, I think, the first week when I was here to start working on this. But as you all know, this is the continuation of our budget work sessions. We had the first one back on May 16th with the constitutionals. So we have a day and a half fully filled with a lot of great information, and looking forward to your feedback. How the schedule is going to go over the next 2 days. We'll flip that slide. And so this morning, today we're really going to focus on the departments, the county departments. As the chairman knows, I was just notified her the tax collector is going to come in this morning at some point, and if we could break at a certain point so he could address the board. And that's the last constitutional that we have to hear from, so he'll be here. But we're going to kick it off with our countywide budget summary. Our Office of Management Budget Director, Tim Jex, is going to give us a summary of both our revenues and expenditures. Then we'll go right into this morning, our BCC departments, our board departments, starting off with our Office of Emergency Management, as you can see there, then continuing with Community Services, Parks and Rec, which we are changing with October 1. I'm recommending that we change the Leisure Services Department to Parks and Recreation to really identify what that department does. Rick is happy, right? Yes. And then we'll go on with Development Services, Information Technology, and then we'll wrap this morning up with Fire and EMS. We'll break for lunch at 12, but only for an hour. We'll come right back. And this afternoon, we'll have links. They're going to address the board this afternoon with their budget request. We have Environmental Services coming. They're also going to bring in their consultant in for the rate study, so we'll talk about that this afternoon. And then we really get into the meat of Public Works this afternoon, including just not our just their Public Works projects, but our countywide fleet, facilities, as well as the third generation of sales tax. I wanted to bring the board up to speed on where we are with that and what it is without it as well. So I know this is probably one of the first times the board is going to be discussing that, so I want to make sure you all are all updated so you have all the information to make decisions as we move forward. We have a countywide capital improvement program that I want to talk with you all about. We call it the Shiny Objects projects, projects that we've already committed to and that we're moving forward on. Some of them do not have funding attached to those, but I just need to put those in front of the board so you understand that we'll probably be coming back for another work session at some point this fall to talk about some of those projects. But I wanted to put those on your radar, and then we'll wrap it up with our resource management and administration budgets. So tomorrow, starting at 1 o'clock, just a half day tomorrow, so hopefully that's on your calendars. During our constitutional officer budget presentation, there was a lot of questions that you all had and some follow-up. All that is in your packet here, but we have a presentation on that, so to ensure that you have all your questions answered. And if you need additional information, we will get that provided for you as well. Another question that came up was the Article 5 funding. As you know, the clerk had asked for additional funding on our side, so we have a presentation on that, and we actually will have Mr. Desmond Morrell here look at from on the legal side to really tell us what that is and what it isn't. And then just to look forward on what our next steps are, and then I'm going to wrap it up tomorrow afternoon with any questions or follow-ups that you all have throughout this day and a half, and what our budget schedule is until we adopt it in September.
Sounds
So,
great.
any questions? Yeah.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Delary.
I like that outline we just saw, but it's not the outline that's in our book. Can I get a copy of that outline so I can make notes accordingly?
Yes, sir. I'll make sure of that.
Can we have it sooner than
Yes.
later so we can follow through with it?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
could we have the pledge this morning?
we could. There's nothing preventing us. Would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Please join me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I certainly was not wanting to be non-patriotic, but I was just getting right down to business. My apologies. So off to Commissioner Delari's request, is that something that we'll be able to?
Yeah, I was just looking at, looks like it's tomorrow afternoon. We have, I see that we just have constitutional follow-up work session, so I'll update it with the Article 5 and the Article 5 in the budget calendar, so he
Okay.
has that. But today's agenda is correct. Today's agenda is correct, so I'll, if you will, Commissioner Delari, at noon, I'll provide you with tomorrow's agenda.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions for the county manager? No, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
All right, Mr. Jex, it's all yours.
Thank you. For the record, Timothy Jex with the Office of Management and Budget. Before we begin, I did want to point out that the documents you received include all the slides. They'll be shown on the screen, as well as backup reports. Where possible, we try to reference the page numbers. So each page, if it says page number, that's at the bottom of the PDF. Slide number would be embedded into the actual slides. So first, we're going to go over 5 general fund revenues that make up 95% of the total revenue in the general fund. First is our largest revenue, ad valorem property taxes. We have FY23 collections through April. We're estimating $211 million for the current year. The FY24 budget estimate, based on the property appraiser's updated projections, is $233 million, and of that, 1.3% is due to new construction. We also have separately a fire fund ad valorem FY24 estimate of $93 million and our transportation trust fund estimate of $2.6 million. Next, we have the second largest revenue in our general fund. These are our half-cent sales tax. These are also our most volatile revenues. As you can see, they've been more up and down throughout history. This is part of the state-collected 6% sales tax. This is not the locally generated sales tax. Seminole County is not one of the 29 fiscally constrained counties, and this revenue is very sensitive to economic factors and sales tax holidays. For FY24, we're projecting $32.4 million. The state did approve additional sales tax holidays next year. We estimate that will impact the county, Seminole County, by $250,000. Next, we have our public service or utility taxes. We have collections through April in FY23. We're trending towards $8.4 million. FY24 budget estimate is $8.5 million. This is a very consistent revenue. This is collected in unincorporated Seminole County. Seminole levies 4% out of a total 10% tax on utilities. The cities each levy their own tax, and just for reference, most of the cities are at the full 10%. This is collected on electricity, natural gas, and water. Next, we have our communication service taxes, which were falling but have leveled out. The FY23 collections are trending at $5.6 million, and we are remaining flat for FY24 at $5.6 million. Next are our gas taxes, which fund transportation trust and a mass transit. We have FY23 collections through February. FY23, we're trending towards $14.9 million. And we are projecting FY24 at $15 million. The county levies a total of 10 cents. 3 cents is from the state, and that includes the 2-cent constitutional levy and a 1-cent county tax. There's a 4th cent also levied through the state that goes directly to the cities. The county does levy a 6-cent local option, and then we have 1 cent that's dedicated to mass transit. On the expenditure side, these are some of the large impacts that affect all of the presentations we'll hear today. All the budgets are basically impacted significantly by these items. We have a 5% salary adjustment, which impacts salaries, overtime, Social Security, FRS retirement, and workers' comp. We have our retirement system, the FRS Senate Bill 7024, which increased regular class employee rates by 14%, special risk by 17%. And it has an overall countywide impact of approximately $7.6 million. We also have, we're proposing a 4% increase on county-paid health insurance premiums, and we had $900,000 increase to our property liability insurance fund, which then is allocated out to the other county funds. So all in, we had an additional $27.6 million revenue budget in the general fund for FY24. Constitutional officer increases were 15 million. Link's increase was 1.2. The current budgeted Article 5 subsidy from the general fund is an increase of 1.6 million. And then we had an additional 1.3 million going to CRAs, Medicaid, and the medical examiner. So this slide is outside agencies from the BCC. This totals $19.1 million increase. On the BCC side, we have personnel budgets increasing by 3.8 million. Our 5-point debt service, the FY23 adopted included $3 million, which was approximately half a year estimate at that time. That's going up to $8 million. We have the property liability insurance charge of $900,000. Facilities projects, this is an increase. This was an area where the county manager wanted to focus on deferred maintenance projects, roofs and HVACs primarily. So we're increasing our general fund facilities maintenance budget by $3.3 million. And then the average BCC operating budget increase was approximately 5.5%, or $2.1 million. And we're using $6.7 million that was added to reserves as part of the mid-year adjustment this year in order to balance primarily towards those deferred maintenance projects. This is our general fund forecast. You can see over the last couple of years we had an actual reserve balance slightly over 20%. We are projecting a 20% reserve balance for FY24 and 25. That concludes our countywide budget discussion. Up next would be the Office of Emergency Management.
Fantastic.
Morning, Chairman.
Thank
Morning,
you.
Chairman, Commissioners. Alan Harris, Director of the Office of Emergency Management. I have with me Stephen Lerner, Senior Planner in Emergency Management, and Carol Coleman, Administrator for...
Alan, I think we might have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I was going to let you finish the sentence.
For Animal
Good
Services.
morning. Yeah, good morning. That's all right.
They're ready.
So I think we've got a couple of questions maybe, or a couple of comments before we move on.
Maybe Alan may want to answer those.
Sure, I'll ask him. Go ahead.
No, I was
That would do-
raising my hand for you.
Okay. So with the projections with the revenues that you're talking about, with the ad valorem, the half-cent sales tax, public service utility tax, all these things, you're going to basically FY24, but we should be able to project it out a year or two, and I'd like to see what those projections are.
Yes, we have those, so we can get those for you.
If you can get those to us, that'd be great. And then the same thing when it comes to on your general fund structural balance with your expenditure increases, CRAs, Medicare, and medical examiner. I'd like to see that broken out, because with the CRAs, I know Sanford has one, Oviedo has one. I think Castleberry may have one. And I'd like to see what are those increases are going to each one of those three entities and when they're going to be sunsetted. So we can actually look at that.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Any other questions this time? No? Okay.
If I could just add one other thing. The other thing that we did not put in that slide regarding salaries for employees, we looked at the region as well. So just to let you know, the 5% that I'm recommending to the board is something that regionally that's happening. So I wanted to ensure that we remain competitive. I've also put 0.5% aside. I don't know what this program is going to be, but it's going to be some sort of merit-based program that I would like to start. I'm working with our HR director, Christina Bartolini. I'll get her name right, sorry. And we're working on that program. I'd like to bring that to the board individually, or talk to you individually about it, but what our thoughts are. But I just wanted something set aside in the budget for next year, so we can start some sort of merit-based program as well.
Commissioner Herr, Commissioner Constantine, Commissioner Zembauer.
So when you say set aside, is that in the 5? So 4.5 is the adjustment, or there's an
It's
additional
addition.
0.5?
Yes, additional 0.5.
Okay. That's it?
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you very much. I'm seeing that the expenditure increases, the personnel budget is $3.8 million. Is that everything that is on page 11? The salary adjustments, the FRS, and the insurance?
In the general fund, yes.
That's what I meant, yes. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Zembauer?
No, my question was answered with Commissioner Hurst's question. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on to emergency management? All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, you're recognized.
All right, thank you very much. So we're here. We're introduced each other.
And you might have to bring that mic closer, because I don't know that everybody
All
can.
right, can you hear me now?
There you go.
I can do karaoke, too. All right, so emergency management has 4 major divisions. I think we're the sole department, there are other divisions, but sole department that is county line to county line. We have no jurisdictional boundary in between any of our divisions. So our division covers all cities and unincorporated Seminole County. The first division that I'd like to discuss today is Animal Services. I want to talk a little bit about the accomplishments. I think before we even get into budget, we really need to thank you all for what we did last year, and there are some major things we did last year. We renovated our entire stray, quarantine, and vet prep building, very large, our largest building out there, making it much more presentable to the community, much safer for the animals, much safer for our community to go in and experience that particular building, look for adoptable animals, things like that. Want to thank you all for your support in doing that. We continued with our kennel gate replacement. Phase 2 was completed. We installed a walk-in cooler, which is not the fun part of our job, but it is an important part of our job. Is many people bring us sick animals. They don't know, a lot of people in the community doesn't know, but they'll bring us sick animals simply because the animal has lived its entire life, and we provide end-of-life services for individuals that can't afford something more, that is more lavish, where the vet could come into their home and things like that. So we provide those services. We also provide after cremation the remains if they want to do an urn or something like that. So that's something that we provide at Seminole County. So we did installation of a cooler. We launched our Hounds Around Town program, did a dog shade area project so individuals can meet dogs and we can play with dogs using our volunteers in a much safer environment, less heat, as you all have experienced over the last few days. It's very taxing for the volunteers to come out without that shade structure. So we want to thank you for that. I want to talk about 2 other areas. Animal Services is really good about public-private partnerships, and 2 of those that we did were the X-ray machine, completely paid by donations. That's amazing. Again, a beautiful public-private partnership that we had, as well as our cat area. We're really excited about our catio, which we hope that you will come out next week and do our yarn cutting, not next week, sorry, the following week, July the 5th, our yarn cutting ceremony, because we don't do ribbons, we do yarns in cat areas. So we hope you will come out for the yarn cutting ceremony. This is phase 1 of a couple different phases. We're already working into the future, and the future is with our public-private partnership, phase 2 will be the inside of the catio. Stairwells, walkways for the cats to play. Also public-private partnership working with Seminole State College. We just got that confirmed this morning, so their interior design and their construction college is going to be helping us with that. So really excited about that. So let's get to the budget, though. Our future request for this next year is some reconstruction of some doorways. This is continuing our renovation of the entire facility. So doorways, entry points, over time they've gotten rusted, just wear and tear of the building. Adding internet connection in our isolation building, which is a building where we treat cats and dogs. A construction of a covered walkway in between the isolation and the stray building. Right now it's just a sidewalk, so the employees have to go out in the elements, like the storm last night. They go out in the elements trying to bring animals back and forth. Very not safe for them. So the construction of a covered walkway, and then an addition of a telecommunications room. And this room is just for our IT infrastructure. As we have grown in technology, the need for that type of room is critical. In the E91 administration or addressing, we want to thank you all for your support for the cybersecurity project, which we are launching. In fact, it's actually a board agenda item on the next week's meeth. phase one of the fire suppression system, so that was going into the network room, which used to be a supply closet. Again, more electronics, more information technology type of equipment. We've had to expand into areas which would typically we would not use. So because of that, we're trying to get rid of the water fire suppression and put in the infrastructure that would protect that network equipment. So that's our phase one, and we've completed that. We're getting ready for phase two, which is a budget item for next year. That'll be one of our highest ticket items, is the fire suppression system for the network rooms, which will protect millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment. As accomplishments, we completed, working with the fire department, the renovation of the fire comm center. Future budget is the sheriff's office renovation project, as that's moving forward. Upgrading of the 911 platforms is something we did last year, and the GIS platforms, again, thank you for that. As we move forward into future budget years, cybersecurity is going to play a major factor, so making sure that that continues, and you'll see a little increase in cybersecurity, this for continuation of those services, so that all is being paid by 911 funds. On the emergency management side, we're continuing to recover from Hurricane Ian and Nicole. Many people still out of their homes, so but over the last year, thanks to your support, and a lot of our operations comes from grants, Homeland Security grants, emergency management performance grants, mitigation grants, things like that. But we've done a lot of training and exercises. We upgraded our web EOC system. We upgraded our satellite technology, as well as the audiovisual equipment, and we purchased some additional special needs disaster response equipment, and looking to another public-private partnership with Duke Energy to enhance that even more this year. For the future budget strategy, not a lot in the budget this upcoming year, more operational. So you'll see a lot of the things that are on your slide there, but all of those are more operational. We're not really asking for any major increases in this particular area. On the telecommunications side, over the last year, thanks again to you, we radio encrypted some law enforcement radio systems, renovation of 3 tower sites. We did some cabling and enhanced our fire department's personal accountability system, as well as we've been working on the 5 Points master plan as far as cabling and fiber and things like that with traffic engineering. For our future budget request, we are requesting an upgrade to our NICE, which is our radio system recording software for 800 megahertz and the 911 system. We'll be doing some mobile programming for the radio system, a rematrix of the 800 megahertz system, working with the school board on the bus radio replacements, like we did a while back with law enforcement and fire rescue, working on that. Also, sheriff's office and the public safety fire department radio enhancements. So a lot of things going on that side. Again, a lot of those are operational, not necessarily a great deal of money involved, but we wanted to let you know that those are things that we're looking for in the future. Turn it back over to Tim.
So this slide shows the Office of Emergency Management's entire budget by account. It's currently $10.5 million for FY23. The FY24 proposed budget is $11.8 million, which is an increase of 12.2%. That includes all personnel, operating, and one-time projects. The personnel accounts include 1 new FTE, and you can see in the capital line the increase of $713,000. That includes the $500,000 for the fire suppression system. If you excluded the one-time projects, the Office of Emergency Management increase would be 4.9%. This slide shows the total funding sources for the office. 79% of the funds come from the general fund, which supports addressing, animal services, and emergency management and emergency telecommunications. This chart does not include emergency management grants, which will be added via budget amendment mid-year. And the 0.4% donation funds is in the animal services programs. This slide shows just the base budgets. So these are the ongoing costs of providing services, excluding one-time projects. The overall increase to the office is 4.9%. We did include backup budget reports that match this slide exactly on pages 27 through 30 of your package. There's currently 59.5 FTEs supporting emergency management services this year. We're proposing 1 new animal services officer for a total of 60.5 FTEs. Now, would you talk a little bit about the new position?
Yeah, so our officer position is critical to our services right now. Sorry. Right now, we have 7 officers in the field running about 1,200 calls per month, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays included. There are delays in us getting to calls. This is a critical need. We actually need 2. We did bring it down to 1, but the initial thought was that we would ask for 2. It is a critical need. The number of people going up, obviously, the number of animals going up, and the calls have gone up. Bite reports run about 120.
125.
Yeah, 120 to 125 on average. Those bite reports and investigations post bite report can take anywhere from an hour if it's a really small neighbor friendly thing to days and days that you've got calls about. So which takes 16, 20 hours to research, and sometimes that goes to court, which takes even longer. We run about 12 to 15 requests for breeding investigations about right. So from complaints that individuals are breeding, we have to investigate those, of course, because we have a puppy mill ordinance. So we average that about a month. So that's researching, trying to find the person. Are they really selling? Are they really breeding? And then making contact if they are, and then issuing citations, things like that. So all of that is done with that handful of people.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to point out that Commissioner Carey has visited us today. I can't imagine she wanted to come to another budget hearing after all the years of sitting through these.
I was just in the building, thought I'd stop and look over.
Welcome, and it's good to see you. Question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go
That's
ahead.
okay. I was just going to ask if there are any questions for Mr.
Yes. I'm getting there. On the capital outlay increase of 131%, are any of those previously deferred projects that are now coming in programmed into this budget, or are these not projects that previously were deferred?
I would say almost all of them are.
Okay. And are there any existing projects that are continuing to be deferred?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to have a full list of those when you get an opportunity. I know
Sure.
you outlined a couple, but I'd like the full list.
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hurd.
Along that,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
So some of them we phased in too. So
Sure.
not necessarily deferred. We just understand.
Sure.
We're given direction, and we, with the County Management Office, try to determine what would be the best course of action. You're going to hear that from all the directors. So a lot of these things they're not necessarily deferred, but we're phasing them in. So.
Sure. And I think that's an important point. I mean, obviously, if you're going to fund this over a 3 to 5 year period of time, by example, I think that's wise. If we're really looking at the cost benefit of doing it over time with the cost of money and so forth. So, but outside of that, any deferred things is what I really am most interested in.
Okay.
Commissioner Hurd.
So along those same lines, there was an item in here that's deferred that was called out, and I don't know that we want to get this granular, but it was the construction of an awning to protect critical mobile infrastructure. So my preference would be that we don't defer anything that protects a major investment that we've already made, because the construction of the awning compared to the cost of the critical item is probably insignificant. So I guess the question is deferring that causing further damage to whatever it is we're protecting there? The answer is probably yes. And so my direction would be, I'm going to take that nod as a yes, and then you don't actually have to sing.
I mean, it's Florida,
for us
so,
right now.
sure.
It's Florida, is that we probably just need to take a look and make sure that we have done a lot of that over the years, and maybe that's not a good thing to carry on into the future.
I'll look at that.
Any other questions? Commissioner Delory?
Thank
And then
you.
Commissioner Constantine.
Commissioner is absolutely correct. I think it'd be advantageous to look at all of those critical things and to make sure we're looking at the cost benefit, and not just to build something, but to build it because of it's actually protecting something. I think, and that's the point that's being made. So we're spending $1 one time instead of keep on having to reinvent the wheel. Alan, can you talk to us a little bit about the next generation of 911? And I just want to make sure that we're prepared for it and where we stand.
So, actually, at last commission meeting, you approved an agreement between all of the counties to start discussion on this. The Next Gen 911, eventually, and Dina's not here today, Dina Walker, but she's actually out at a conference learning about this new technology. But the new technology will get to a point, we can text to 911 now, we can even photo to 911 in certain areas. We're not quite there yet, so that's going to be our next step. And then finally, we'll be to a point where you will be able to grab your, I'm going to grab your cell phone. So you'll be able to grab your cell phone, you're going to be able to video. The dispatcher will be able to see what's going on at the location, upgrade the call if necessary, send that to the fire engine, not the drunk guy driving, the lieutenant on the fire engine and the paramedic. The paramedic will be able to see what's going on. Okay, I need additional resources. This is years in the future, but it's going to happen. Let me show the ER what's happening. I'm going to this ER. The trauma center sees what's happening. We need to call in some trauma nurses. We need to call in a surgeon. That's where Next Gen 911 is going in the future. We have to start building along. Text to 911 was the first step. Now we're going into the next step. So,
Great.
but along with that, there's costs. So, and we try to leverage the E911 cost.
And that's the reason I'm bringing it up,
Yeah.
is because there is a cost to all of this, and our taxpayers have to be aware of it.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we're putting in the right infrastructure and the foundation to be prepared for whatever that widget is that you're describing, because there's going to be a lot of steps along the way. It's not just one time, flip a switch or do one budget item. But to do that, I also want to make sure that we're looking at the E911 funds. Can we actually see the projections of that as well, instead of just seeing what the percentage is, so that we can be prepared as we move forward?
Sure, absolutely.
Commissioner
We're
Constantine.
working together to make sure that's happening.
Commissioner Constantine.
Yes, good morning, Alan. And
morning.
I just wanted to know, after all the other questions, grants and aids are important, always as a supplement to our budget and anything. Is this a reflection that we really don't know what's out there yet, or that there's truly a reduction in the potential grants? Because I know we've been so successful in your department of getting grants in the past.
So in some cases, grants have gone up, in some cases, grants have gone down, and we have done a pretty good job also using resource management, George Wittering and his team, to leverage as many grants as we can. And in emergency management, we're quite successful, almost to a fault. We're almost at a point, which is a kind of a weird point to be at, where we don't have the staff to manage the grants. So when we get to that point, then we got to figure out, can we actually manage all these reports, these quarterly reports, the closeouts, all that stuff. All the scope of work that's required for one Homeland Security report requires hours and hours and hours and hours of justification and scope of work and deliverables and things like that. And then every mitigation project, the hazard mitigation grant program alone for Hurricane Ian, we're doing about 25 of those individual projects. So that's a lot of staff time. So we get to we leverage every grant that we can. Some grants are increasing, some grants are decreasing. The flood mitigation grant, there's so many different grants. I don't want to go into individual grants, plus I would bore you. But we try to leverage, when one goes down, we look at other ones where we may be able to fit something.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Harris? The team? All right. Thank you so much. On to community services. Yes, Commissioner Hurd.
Just a question for Tim. I think at one point we had a line of sight, it may not have been at this stage of the process, to open positions. Does that exist somewhere?
You talk about
Vacancies.
vacancies?
Vacancies.
Yes, we actually have that. We can provide you all that report as well.
So it's super helpful to understand open positions when we're being asked for new positions.
And our directors are prepared for that. And so when you go...
After last year, I'm sure they
I'm
are.
sure,
Alan
yes.
is racing back to the front of the room, I see.
He's
grabbing a microphone.
He's fully staffed already. He's going to tell me that. I knew that.
I actually knew that for you.
I was asking our department directors that as well about vacancy rates. So I'll ask each of the directors, when they get to that point, they can share that with the board. And then we can provide this in a report to you as well.
Thank you. Great question. Commissioner Zembauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that same request, I've had a standing request, a monthly basis out of HR to have a vacancy report. Sure. I have not seen one of those in several months. If I could get that back on track,
Absolutely.
it'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mrs. Thal.
Good morning, Commissioners. Allison Thal, Community Services Director. Close enough? Can hear? Okay. So Community Services, as you know, is generally known for our 4 distinct areas. We have our community assistance, which provides our direct support to individuals and our local nonprofits. We have our community health, which has launched a robust substance use and healthy community initiative. I also have community development, which handles all of our ESG, our CDBG, our home, and our SHIP funds. And saving my best for last, I have veteran services. So moving on. So now that our ERAP and our ARPA, individual assistance programs, are officially in the record book, my community assistance staff has been hard at work serving our residents with our flagship prevention and mandated programs. To date, we have served 427 households with our rental assistance, our dental assistance, our cremation services, and our hospitalization programs. And with the implementation of our storefront last year, we have provided one-on-one assistance with our digital applications, uploading our documentation to over 631 individuals thus far this year, compared to 125 individuals last year. Finally, 307 homeless households have received housing and case management services. And just a quick reminder before moving on, we're going to be coming back to you in the fall with a presentation and recommendations regarding our annual Community Services Agency grant program criteria and our policies. Our community and mental health initiative that was actually born out of the key strategic priorities has actually hit the ground running. We are addressing the substance use epidemic by contracting with Recovery Connections. Recovery Connections has assisted 59 individuals with moving into recovery-oriented supportive housing, as well as completing 68 medicated assisted treatment, or MAP, appointments. And they've provided over 286 hours of recovery support services, coupled with 38 employability training sessions, which has really shown that this program is yielding some very successful local success stories. The Healthy Community Initiative has gotten off the ground as well, with the addition of 2 case managers who spend their time in the community participating in outreach events and integrating with the paramedicine paramedics and their clients. My community development team has successfully been juggling 6 separate funding sources, and specifically they've targeted CDBG funds to supplement 6 public facility projects, plus 8 public service projects. They use their home funds to subsidize the construction of 3 affordable houses for home ownership. They provided 6 first-time homebuyers with SHIP down payment assistance, and they have reconstructed, or provided minor home repairs to 24 homeowners, and are currently attempting to assist 28 households that have applied for disaster assistance due to being adversely impacted by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. We also have 4 local developers that are in our pipeline that we are collaborating with right now to increase the number of affordable and workforce housing units. Now, my veteran service officer and his 2 assistant veteran service officers have collectively met and assisted with over 18,000 veterans this year, both in person and via electronic means. Since June of 2022, over $2 million of retroactive or back pay has been secured for 294 veterans and/or their surviving spouses. This amount is over and above the monthly benefit checks that our veterans already receive. Overall, in 2022, more than $192.6 million has been brought back into Seminole County specifically for veteran compensation, pension, and benefits. So now for the slideshow. So up next are some pictures reflecting each of our areas in community services. So first, what you see is a ship reconstruction project for Ms. Brenda Mays. Brenda is a lifelong resident of Seminole County. This was her family home that has been in her family for 45 years, or since 1945. As you can see, we demolished her home and constructed her a new house with added accessibility to both her entries and her bathrooms. Next are 2 pictures of our two of our CDBG public facility projects. The first is upgrades to the sharing center, including a bathroom renovation and reflooring in their food pantry. And the photo on the right is the new roof going on True Health. Then, this is the groundbreaking from Florida Specs for the Midway Affordable Housing Project, which is being funded with our ARPA funds. Mr. Hillary is actually currently working his way through the permitting process with the City of Sanford right now and intends to have his first family housed by the upcoming holidays. Here we show several of our collaborative health partners that we're working with in the community. And lastly, our amazing veteran service team.
Thank you, Allison. So this slide shows the budget by account for Community Services Department. It's currently $18.5 million. It's increasing to $19.2 million for FY24, which is a 3.9% increase. I'll clarify that the grants and aids account, that's grants that are given by the county to other agencies, so it's not necessarily reflective of the entire grants that support the operation. And in fact, the personnel account increase includes 1 new FTE. That's offset by a reduction in the grants and aid line, so that's why you're seeing that reduction there. We're bringing some services in-house. But the overall increase to the Community Services Department is 3.9%. Community Services is almost 50-50 supported grant funding versus the general fund. That's a little bit of an increase from last year. We were at exactly 50-50. The base budgets, with excluding projects, which there's, I believe, only 1 project listed. It's a vehicle, is going from $18.2 million to $19.2 million, so a base budget increase of 5.2%. Currently, there's 48 FTEs in the department. They're asking for 1 new case manager for an FY24 proposed FTE of 49.
So as Tim mentioned, you'll see from my budget highlight slide that I am requesting 1 new position. I am requesting a case manager position that will work directly with identified chronically homeless individuals to provide housing stability and case management. The project that was currently known as the Impact Fund, which was born out of the regional housing, the First 100, is currently being subcontracted out to 3 nonprofit entities. Pathways Home, Healthcare Center for the Homeless, they are currently being funded through general revenue to provide case management for up to 27 chronically homeless individuals. Additionally, we have some funding that has been set aside for the Homeless Services Network for their housing location team. So staff is recommending that these 3 contracts not be renewed for fiscal year 23-24, and that the case management of these individuals, as well as the housing location services, all be brought back in-house. Bringing this program in-house will provide more efficient and effective outcomes, as well as improved oversight. Internally, our department currently manages a permanent supportive housing program with 46 individuals, so this is a natural progression to add 27 existing clients. With the additional caseload, 1 additional case manager is being requested at a cost savings of over $70,000 to the general revenue budget.
And then Allison, if you would just mention your vacancies.
And my vacancies. I actually have 2 vacancies at this moment. One is about 2 months old. We just have not put that in place yet to post it. The second is tied to our home ARPA funding. So we are in the planning process of how we are spending the home funds. Once we have a plan, we will advertise for a vacancy there.
Any other questions for Ms. Thal? Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Allison, I know that the Regional Homeless Commission that I sit on for this board just made a big announcement about additional funding for homeless vets. Have they spoken to you all and about how that money will be allocated and/or used in Seminole County?
We have not, Carrie, I'm looking to Carrie, I'm looking to my left to Carrie Longsworth. We have not heard from Martha R. or anyone from the Homeless Services Network with respect to that yet.
Okay. If the board will allow me, I'd like to speak to Martha R. with our staff to make sure that the funding is properly allocated. I just want to make sure of that. Is that okay?
That'd be great.
Okay, and we'll report back. Thank you. Because I know we made a big presentation. There was a big news release 2 weeks ago, I think it was. Yeah.
Along those lines, I'll ask, with the contract that you're proposing to not renew with HSN, are those 3 partners aware that you're not planning to renew those contracts, or did we just tell them?
We just told them.
Like here now?
Like here now, yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Oops.
And to add on to that, we were discussing that, so I had Allison, it's like bring that up to the board, what our plan is,
Okay.
and discuss it, with the board. We do still have funding that goes to HSN as well, so this is not cutting off all their funding. So before she made contact to them, I wanted to ensure that that was a good board direction, or get board direction for that.
Any thoughts, Commissioner Zembauer?
I just want to thank Allison and her team for having the foresight to consider bringing that back under your oversight in-house. I think it is going to be a much more efficient use of dollars and benefits. So I think that speaks to a lot of foresight on your staff's behalf, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our tax collector, Mr. Kroll, is here. We'd love to welcome you to come and address the board if you would. I know you couldn't be here when we had the Constitutionals du jour event a week or so ago, and so we appreciate you being willing to come back and talk to us one-on-one.
Well, thank you, and good morning. Our budget is a little different with the tax collector's office because we're not ever requesting money from the county. We actually are revenue producing. So really, my office here today wants to just say we don't have our numbers yet until the end of the fiscal year. We obviously still have payroll and expenses to get through until August. So we are kind of looking at a snapshot just of today. With the expenses that we've had, the added expenses that the DOR got on us really hard because of all the issues from my predecessor. So they were basically, one of the things we had was a lot of empty payroll seats. And they basically, last fiscal year, they told us, they said, well, you come in with your budget, you better use it or lose it. And I was like, well, I plan to use it because we're way understaffed. So we've been filling seats greatly. We started at like 98 employees, and now we're at like 122, I believe. So we really are trying to get all the spaces taken so we can get more efficiency through our DMV for the rest of the county. So really, right now, we're looking, a total guesstimate of what we would have for returning for this year would be probably around the $3 million mark, because we did have expenses added with payroll and the build-out of the Altamont branch. But then the rest of it, we should, next year's, we don't have that budget completed yet. But really, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer. So if anyone would have any additional questions for me.
Mr. Zembauer?
Thank you very much, JR, for being here today. And I understand the capital outlay issue. Have you had any forecasting going over the next several years on what you may return? I know it's $3 million this year, but if you don't have planned in the near future any capital improvements,
Yeah, we have nothing major improvements for anything on the buildings. We're looking good right now. We got the payroll. It was kind of just like a hit we had to take because we had no HR department, so I had to create an entire HR department. We didn't have just infrastructure. Everybody was doing side jobs. You know, they would be my manager that's doing the call center was also doing the ordering, you know, the purchase ordering. So we were just kind of like, all right, we had to create a position for that kind of takes over and moves people around to get everybody having it, and plus doubling up on having supervisors that we don't have one person leaves and, you know, that everything leaves with them. So we have to have backups of everybody. So that's where we had a lot of payroll and just putting CSRs on the front line to keep our offices fully stocked.
so as you work your way through your finalization this year, do you think you may be able to give us some kind of forecast over the next 2 to 3 years? Is that a fair ask?
No, it would be a problem because, you know, we don't know, because revenue is going to be our thing.
Sure.
We have money that comes in, you know, so
Right.
we know obviously property values go up, and, you know, most of our money is made from collection of the property taxes. Most of our DMV is kind of a loss leader for us. So we look at how much revenue's coming in. I mean, house prices are up about 12 to 15%. Overall, so we're going to say probably it's going to be a higher number every year, but I don't know, you know, how it goes. If prices dropped like they did in, you know, 2008, then, you know, things change for us.
No, I understand, and that's what, just a forecast projection. I'm not asking for anything hard, but just any kind of forecast based on where you're at with your restaffing, where you're at with your capital improvements, just to give us maybe some vision
I
for the
think
next few
typically if we
years
said
moving
3 to
forward.
4 million a year anywhere, depending on if there is capital expenses or anything big, major that I have to do, you know, it could be on the higher side of the fours. I mean, like last year was 4.7 million, I believe. But, you know, we don't know this year. I mean, I don't like to overestimate because then people are going to hold me to it. So I'd rather downplay it until we know for sure and surprise you guys at the end.
Okay. Surprise, thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Delary and then Commissioner Herr.
Thank you. JR, I just want to say thank you. It's nice to have you part of that overall Seminole County team. It's nice to see your leadership, and I want to thank you for all your hard work and your staff's hard work.
No, thank you.
A lot has been done over the past year or two, and it shows that we're all moving in a positive direction, so I want to thank you, and looking forward to great things coming up in the future years.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Herr?
So, yes, and we can't be in a position where we're just surprised. That just doesn't work for me. So a budget is a projection. We're not going to hold you to it. But being able to project out for 2 or 3 years is just a part of what we all do every day. And I would say I'm certain that the county manager's office would be willing to lend staff to help get through that process. But I would say that you have worked miracles in terms of what you've accomplished while you've been in office so far, and this needs to be the next miracle that gets worked so that we get better at this piece of it from the perspective of transparency to the public and transparency to us in terms of being able to actually budget appropriately. So I would just tell you that I think this is the next area of opportunity for us.
And in my
And I
office, we
do
don't-
love you just like Bob does, just to be clear. And
I didn't take it any
we
other
got to
way.
get better at this.
I did not take it any.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't, I mean, our budget usually doesn't change much. I mean, unless payroll started skyrocketing or
Which
something.
makes the ability to do a
Easier.
projection even better.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we could
then
just
you can't
say
it
every
doesn't
year, we
change
usually
much.
just raise it a slight amount to say, okay, make sure, you know, going for inflation and raises and stuff that'll come in, just regular 3% or whatever that we kind of guesstimate on. But our typical expenses, we don't have any, like I said, unless there's something capital outlay that I have to worry about, which I don't have anything on the horizon for the next 2 to 3 years. So I could say, no, nothing going there yet, but that could change too if something changes, you know, statutes or something wise that I have to adjust, but.
Right, which is why we need that all in writing with a real projection.
Okay. I'll try
every
to-
year as part of this process, just like every other constitutional officer.
Yeah, but my office is different from the other
I get
constitutionals.
that.
But
I definitely understand that one is revenue generating and the other, but one is revenue generating and then could be revenue depleting to us if you're taking more of what has historically been revenue generating out of the receipts that we receive. So we still have to go through the process.
yeah, I get it. It's just, with,
I mean,
like I
I'll
said, with
defer.
my
Am I
office.
crazy? I'm not crazy. I may be crazy, but not on this.
Well, I mean, I look at it this way. The office, I was elected to better the tax collector's office.
And you've done that.
And, with the money that we have to work with, I have to use that and make our office number one. And I said, I want to be able to say, obviously, excess fees go back to the county, but it shouldn't also be part of your budget because it's nothing that you can budget on because you don't know what my job is to get done. So that's kind of it's going to be a small amount comparatively to where the other expenses come in. Either if it was $1 million off because I had to do something major for the office, it's still being spent in a government office, whether it's undone. It just depends on who decides where to spend the money.
So Commissioner Zembauer, I think, Commissioner Constantine and then Commissioner Zembauer, we need like a light system or something.
Yes,
I can
we did.
remember.
I've been asking for
That is in the plan. That's going to come up to you soon.
Yeah, my
I'm working
apologies.
on it.
So, JR, I think that you've heard a concern of a commission that although you say your budget doesn't change that much, we were used to, previous to you, a budget that shifted a great deal and one in which we did not know about very often, what was going on. You have changed that, and we appreciate that, and I think you've heard that from the other commissioners. But still, as you're still dealing with a commission that believes very strongly in transparency, and you've heard that word a couple of times already. And one of the things, we've even requested a piece of legislation that was actually filed, but nothing ever happened to it, and we understood that probably wouldn't be the case in transparency. And in fact, talking to your president of the tax collectors, Linda Hayes, out of Putnam County, I suggested that, and it dropped like a lead balloon with her. But the fact of the matter is, that's one thing that would go a long way. And I think that you have done that. But you are putting everything out there like we do in your budget in full transparency, are you not?
Yes.
Okay. Then in doing that, I think that what they're just requesting, they're not saying, oh, we're going to, we want to know how much money is going to be in our budget from you so that we can plan that. We just would like to know that you are looking out 2-3 years and what you project your budget would be. So, that's essential.
I think that's a mischaracterization of my request. I actually
well, that's
had
my request.
I know, but you used "we," and "we" doesn't, I'm not in that.
Okay,
"we."
I'm sorry. Then what is yours?
I was very clear. I would defer to Commissioner Zembauer because I think, I'm expecting a projection.
Commissioner Zembauer.
I think the citizens deserve that.
I'll try to.
I'm sorry, Ken, let me finish. I did not say not have a projection. I'm just simply saying I think it's very difficult, to sit there. We are not using that projection to judge or to put into our budget because I don't think we can. Because you can project, but you can't guarantee. And that's all I
I
said.
think that defines the entire world we live in.
I agree.
We project the gas tax, we can't guarantee it. We project all of the other revenues,
And that's all I was trying to
to
say to JR in the sense that we're asking for the projection. It's not because we're going to use it to, I'm not planning, I don't expect to say, okay, if he says he's going to bring back $5 million in 2 years, I'm not going to incorporate that into the budget. I don't think any of us would do that, and that's all I was saying.
Well, the difference is, all the other constitutionals will get a budget present their budget to you, which has been approved on the budgets, and then you at the end of it, I mean, how much are they returning of their budget, of what they projected, and how much I'm sure they can't spend down to the exact dollar without, worrying about going over. So they're always going to have some amount back, some smaller amount back. It's just the difference is my budget. I'm not going to go over budget. We can't do that. Even Greenberg didn't go over his budget, but he just found with the excess revenue is where he said, well, I can't control that. That comes in.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, Mr. Kroll, at this point is we'll let Mr. Zembauer ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love you too. We all appreciate you. However, to be clear, I don't think, we're not trying to dictate in any way, shape, or fashion how you do your budget. I think what we're simply asking is, you should know if you're running your office financially sound, that you know what your capital improvements projections should be over the next several years. You know what your staffing currently is, what the vacancies are, how soon you think you may fill those. We know what a general revenue stream historically has been, and I think all we're asking for is, we're not looking for a guarantee. We understand that there's mandates that come out of Tallahassee, there's legislation that happens that is going and perhaps affect you financially. All we're looking for is if you can give a 3-year projection that just basically says, hey, based on today and what we know today as facts and our plans over the next 3 years, provided revenue does not change, this is what you should expect estimated that could be returned to the county. I think that's all we're asking. We're not trying to say, hey, we want you to guarantee us you're going to give us $3 million a year, $2 million a year, or none a year. Just some kind of projection, which is going to help our budget people look and see what all revenue sources could be. We deal with the same thing. We have impacts legislatively that may impact us, other costs and expenses that may come across the radar that we're not aware of today. We get all that. And I think all we're asking for is give us just some good, sound, reasonable financial forecasting that you're comfortable with. Nobody's going to hold your feet to the fire, but I think it's imperative that we do this in light of what's happened in the past. And I think it's just good business practice anyhow. So
Yeah,
I just want to make sure.
I mean,
There's no
I think we're all
adversarial
agreeing.
here. Yeah.
I always said it's like it's anywhere from $3 to $4 million unless there was something that comes up that I
Sure.
said. So I'd say, okay, if we're not having any capital improvements and we don't have any new employees coming, we're fully staffed at this point, so we're looking at, this next year is going to say this is where we want to stay. So it's going to be pretty consistent on that amount. So we should say, once, and of course in August when we present our final budget for the next year, that tells us, of course, what's going to happen for our next year.
Sure.
I mean, right now we're asking at the end of my year, what am I going to project to give for the following year or even this year? And I said, well, I don't even have for this year yet because I still have 2 months left. And I mean, I could go through all the numbers and get pretty close, but it's still going to be like something else could come up. I mean,
Sure,
it would be,
and we
I can't
get
get to
that.
the penny on it for sure.
No, and we don't want that. I don't think any of us sitting here are expecting any of these directors or any of our staff or constitutionals to give us to the penny. That's not the real world. Based on sound financial practices and management of knowing what you're going to be doing in your office, that's all we're asking for.
Okay.
I'm not going to sit here next year and go, well, you told us. That's not going to happen, at least not from this commission. I suspect it's not going to happen from any of us.
Nobody will do that, in my mind.
We just want to see that projection. However you can get that to us, and working with our staff would be great.
Okay. No, I mean, that's fair. We're just, like I said, I just don't think it changes much,
No, and it may not. And it may not.
doesn't change much.
And if that's the answer at the end of the day, hey, we'll take it and run.
So
Okay.
I will say, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Is there anyone else before I ask my question or make a comment? Whether we like it or not, the people who serve before us leave an impression. And if we don't learn from those experiences and have different expectations moving forward, we put ourselves in a potential position to repeat maybe past behavior. So I'm not suggesting that in any way, shape, or form, you commented on the prior person in your role, that you would do anything remotely similar to what we experienced there. But if we as a board don't learn from that and then say to all of our constitutionals who are partners with us in serving the citizens, we need to all share together the information that you have and the projections you have, whatever those may be. I think that would be foolish of us, and we would not be good stewards. And we recognize that your budget is different. That was made very clear by the prior person in your position in some very colorful ways over the years. So please understand that we are asking every constitutional officer to share with us in writing their budgets, to a degree, their projections that they are able to, because it is all money from the citizens, and we do all, at the end of the day, have a responsibility for it. And I think we want to be very careful how much we talk about what happened prior, because there are still some things that are ongoing with that, as you're well aware. But I'll say the word transparency one more time. In this county, especially in your particular constitutional office, we cannot be too transparent. And so I think that's what this board is trying to convey. So we really appreciate you being here, and anything that you can provide to us in writing subsequent to our adoption of the budget would be great.
Okay, yeah, we're, like I said, we're working on it now obviously for 24's budget. We're currently still working on getting everything together on it, but like I said, I mean, we have just normal office stuff in there, nothing out of the ordinary.
And we have normal office stuff from all of the constitutionals, so we need yours too. All right?
That's not a problem.
Great, thank you so much, we
All right, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Parks and Recreation.
Who came up with this?
Isn't that a comedy series?
It is, and it is very accurate.
Great show.
Which one, I want to know which one are you, are the role of the comedy show?
Excuse me, I believe I would introduce myself as Leslie Nope. I do have the binders on my shelf to prove it, so. So good morning, everyone. Again, the Parks and Recreation Department, I've got to get used to that. With us today is our leadership team. I'll start with Christine Patton from Library Services. I'll wave. Everybody wave. There we go. Shane Michael from Extension Services, Bill Pandos from Greenways and Natural Lands Division, Michael Wersing from Parks and Recreation. We'll work on that one too. And then last but not least, Sherry Williams, who you've seen through a number of the other past presentations as our Special Projects Manager. Oh, and Jacqueline. Yeah, I forgot about Jacqueline. She's sitting right next to me. She provided me this notebook. Certainly don't want to forget about her. First and foremost, talking a little bit about our overall operations. A couple things that we've listed here is the far majority of the personnel in our department are really outward-facing, and they're outward-facing, and they're not working 8 to 5 days a week. They're really on a 7-day calendar. So a lot of folks that we have, it's always a challenge to make sure that we always have to remember we've got folks that are working nights and weekends, basically, and we provide them the same support across the board for everyone else that we provide as well. We have many other facilities that we maintain, both inside and outside. We have the golf course as our listed on here. We'll show you a little bit of a summary on that as we go through the presentation. The museum, our natural lands areas, our nature center, all of our trails, and as well as various county medians and the outdoor maintenance on many county facilities. So we picked one accomplishment from each of the 4 divisions. The first one, Extension Services Division, I have to say, really proud of the fact that their service continues to win state awards, and they won 2 national awards last year alone. Out of our Greenways and Natural Lands group, working with ARPA funding, was able to do some projects that we had that were outstanding at Lake Mills Park. There's more on the way. Library Services completed the master plan, which we just went through the implementation portion of that last week at the work session. And then last but not least, we continue to hold more events every year, resulting in a large number of economic impact to the county through those particular tournaments. We've mentioned this in the past, and the reason why I'm bringing this up to you right now is we have begun the process for reaccreditation. This will be the third time. We're one of only 5 counties that will be going for 3 accreditations throughout the state. That process began really at about earlier this year. We've gotten folks at all levels of the organization involved that help to reach that goal, and then we'll go through that formal evaluation process in early 2024 to hopefully gain our third national reaccreditation. By the numbers, we've looked at a number of trends over the years. Obviously, we continue to see more events at the Boomba Sports Complex. We've continued to see growth year over year at folks that are coming back into the libraries after we saw obviously going through COVID. Another couple of other things to notice along the way, the line next to the bottom, last year we added another educator as part of our natural lands program, and those folks, there's just a small handful of them, have really been able to ratchet up the number of environmental programs available, and folks are taking very well advantage of that educational opportunity. Last but not least, on the bottom, we continue to see an uptick in the number of CEUs, especially through extension services, of providing pesticide applications, not just to our staff, but to folks who work at a number of different agencies across the region. One of the highlights that we wanted to bring to you today was the operations at the Wekiva Golf Club. We were here a year ago. We were only a good 4 months into that particular process. In addition to the financials, which I'll show you in just a moment, we've had a number of minor projects that have been ongoing since we made acquisition of that particular property. All of the tee markers have been refreshed. All of the tee markers have been redone. The fences which face the public along the golf course in that area of the county where we're all failing, they have been replaced and about 90% of the way through. We have some others less noticeable projects that are underway, specifically a pretty large one in turning the entire operation over from septic into sewer. And then we've got a large project in our budget as well, moving forward with major renovation of the existing irrigation. So what you can't read on this screen is all the way down at the lower right-hand corner. And that basically this is after our first year of operation. Operationally speaking, the operation pulled a profit for both our management company that we have down to earth, that we have a good relationship with, as well as for the county. So we're covering our cost out at the golf course. There we go.
That is a huge thing, by the way.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Like, that's worth taking a deep breath and a pause, and like, that's golf clap worthy at this stage of the game.
Take a drink.
That's right.
Yes.
And I would remind, there was a lot of people that were naysayers on taking that under our wings, and what a delight, what a success story.
Good job.
So thank you. So far this year, we're running about the same pace. One of the other things that you'll see within the budget and working with our management company, we were able to reduce some of the operational budgets that were there. They inherited the budget as it was operating. They were able to take a look at it and evaluate it over the course of the first year, as well as our staff, and then we were able to recommend some reductions in some of the costs as well going forward. So again, recognizing efficiencies and some of the repairs that we've been able to do throughout the course of the operation to help in terms of the cost, the operational cost.
Okay, so this slide shows the overall budget by account for the Parks and Rec Department. The FY23 budget is $26.4 million. FY24 proposed budget is $27.5 million. It's a 4.2% increase. The reduction in operating and the increase in capital is primarily related to just the accounting for one-time projects. So in fiscal 23, we had more operating projects, and fiscal 24, we have more capital projects. The personnel accounts are increasing and include 1 new park ranger FTE for the natural lands program. The Parks and Rec Department is primarily funded through the general fund at 83%. Also, the 13%, that does reflect the Wekiva Golf Course revenues. And then there's other small impact fee, tourism, and special revenues. If you exclude projects, the base budget for the Parks and Rec Department is increasing by 1.7%, and this does include the Parks and Rec reduction, which Rick pointed out, where we were able to reduce some of the operating budgets related to the Wekiva Golf Course. currently 173.42 FTEs in Parks and Rec. We're proposing one new park ranger for a total of 174.42. We're just going to talk about the highlights.
So in terms of the park ranger, this is a new concept we developed a couple of years ago. We were looking at that to deal with some particular issues, especially what we have over the weekends. As we continue to see an uptick in the number of both tournaments as well as the staffing that's needed on the weekends at our larger parks, we still have rentals all over the county at unstaffed facilities. Usually in the past, we've used and pulled employees during a moment, a break, to run out to a certain spot and take a look at it at another facility where we might have had a rental or a campground or a pavilion. In this case, we've developed a concept which is not too dissimilar from other agencies, the notion of a park ranger. This person would be mobile on the weekends and would be able to go and specifically call out those areas where we did have rentals, make sure the place was still clean at the end of Saturday, and that Sunday we're all set up for any other rentals that we had. We included in the budget a vehicle for them to be able to drive around with, and we've talked specifically about how we would manage that individual going forward.
That concludes our presentation.
Just going to add one more thing on there. And as the last couple of months, I've been really working with Richter and his team. And he has requested a few more things in his budget request coming up. And so what I had asked him just to pause, I have Christian Swenson, our Assistant County Manager, and Rick, they're going to be doing a deep dive and analysis of our parks and library system. I want them to look at what our existing needs and impacts are, as well as we move forward with some of our projects that the board has approved to move forward. So I'm planning to do a state of our parks and library system this fall, and they're going to review that this summer, so you all have a good really picture of what our parks and library services is. We may tweak some of that budget after the year starts if you all want to move forward, but I just wanted to give you the full picture, and I just asked Rick and his team if they would just give me a couple months to do this analysis with them and bring it back to the board.
If I might, I left one little nugget down off the bottom of the screen right there. We had an opportunity to meet with some folks from FP&L and a sports lighting consultant who came to us a few months back and said, we've got a different concept on how you might be able to fund improvements over time. This is something we were looking at years ago, hoping that somebody would come up with a process like this. In this case, we may be in the position to bring back to you how we refresh our sports lighting, and I'm not talking about just ball field lighting, tennis courts, basketball courts, you name it. We have a number of other facilities that require parking lot lighting revamps that are just 30 years old plus in some cases, as well as in some of our facilities where we may have a lit court, for example, and we might have a lit parking lot, but the path between the court and the parking lot is unlit. So we've identified all of those areas. We're scrubbing that list, and we hope to bring that back to you as a potential for a way to potentially fund these incrementally without having to take the deep dive into millions and millions of dollars worth of lighting needs at our facilities. So that will be coming back to you as well.
Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you.
Commissioner Zembauer.
Thank you. And Rick, I agree with the comments that other commissioners made about the Wekiva Golf Club. So these questions that I'm going to ask you here, I just want to make sure. In page 43, this was for last fiscal year, correct? This was for 21-22, if I'm not mistaken.
Slide.
Page 43. It's
Slide 43. Slide 43. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So looking at 22-23, the December, January, February, and April are all down from last year's fiscals. And the months coming up, which are generally slow, I'm looking at June, July, August, September, that total last year lost more money than we've made so far this year. So my question is it because of the improvements, the cost of the improvements that are being funneled into making the golf course better, or are we looking at a trend of downward use of that particular golf course?
I think in last fall's numbers, we also got hit with the storms.
Okay?
That had a huge impact on our operations, both with debris management, debris cleanup, as well as the fact that the course for a long time was just flat out waterlogged. So we've got to, in all of our trends, make sure that we're not forgetting about that downtick that we had. The other thing that we're allowing for as we continue to move forward is really understanding what does the standard year look like. We probably haven't had a standard year yet in terms of business, but making sure that as we go month to month, we're keeping those things in mind. It's very much about the understanding the trends, accounting for those kinds of acts of God, if you will, and making sure that we're taking that into account as we project forward. Some of the reductions that we saw in our budget were to deal specifically with efficiencies as we continue to really understand what we have there. And then we think what's going to be a big bump in the playability of the course is going to be the replacement of the irrigation system. Right now, driving around the facility, if you can see which holes have probably the biggest problems in terms of irrigation issues, just by seeing what the grass looks like. We've got some wonderful holes from tee to green, and then we have some other holes where the tees look great and the greens look great, and everything in between is problematic at best. So our feeling is that as we continue to gain this knowledge, this operational knowledge, and then factor in those kinds of improvements, we'll get a much better job at being able to project outward what the trends may look like.
And I don't want to disagree with you. I agree with you on this September, but the real loss last year was in August before the storms, and I had a lot of fun that day that when you and I rode the golf cart around.
Yep.
There are a lot of needs. And you have pointed them out up here, that some of which you've done, some of which are future projects.
Correct.
And that's what I was trying to get at, is when these things are done, you're projecting that although we have, from last year to this year, we've not made, let's put that in some cases, as much money in December, January, February, and April, you do believe that with these changes, that this golf course is on will be on an upward trend.
That's correct.
Right now, it's not. Even though we've made more money this year than last year, so far, the bad months are coming in golf.
Right.
Nobody plays much in July, August because of the heat.
And I'll tell you, we will no doubt take a hit next summer again, because right now we're trying to plan the irrigation replacement to happen during our slowest months. All of that will need to be factored in as we move ahead. The conversations we've been having regarding the implementation of that system, do you have to close 9? Do you close the front 9, the back 9, so on and so forth, but really digging in and working with our management company. This isn't the first time that they've had to go through something like this, but it's an improvement that's sorely needed for the future viability of the property.
So the last question I have on the Wekiva Golf Club then, with May, June, July, August, September still having to be factored in, and last year's losses, not this year's, last year's losses in those months, or the projection in those months would be more than the total revenue we've received to this point, income. You're projecting still that we're going to make money this fiscal year on this golf course?
That's where we're on track for. Next year, however, I cannot promise that, but we will be doing everything that we can to accommodate the improvements that are needed.
That's good news, because we've not been asking for promises today, so you're doing great. Commissioner Herr.
I just want to make sure that I understand after that line of questioning. All of the expenses for all of the upgrades that we've been doing, the fence, the markers, the this, the that, it's all in here, which is creating variability.
Yeah, it's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Zembauer. Commissioner Delary.
Thank you very much. I appreciate working with FP&L on this and your lighting possible to this LEDs. And on that note, has there been any consideration to offset some of the costs that we are here? As you see, the general fund is 83%. And we know what the economic impact is to the community. I got that. Is there any thought been given to some of the trailheads and some of the trails we have, some of the natural lands, on solar arrays being put in to supplement the cost of these with Duke, FPL, and those sorts? Even at the sports complex, for that matter, there may be an opportunity.
I think there's, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just a thought.
Right.
Has that been considered? I mean, I know out in my district, we've got acres and acres and acres of land, and I'm not saying that I want to pollute the natural habitat with solar panels, but we have open areas that some are learning centers, some are visitor centers, some are parking areas, and I'm not so sure we couldn't leverage to help the taxpayers' cost by having some of these assets deployed and working with the utility partners.
I'll give you my unvarnished feeling on that. We are open to the opportunity. The need at this point, however, is a much larger nut, that as we're able to break that down into hopefully smaller pieces and really understand how we can move forward with that, absolutely, look for opportunities. Right now, we have, for example, at the C.S. Lee boat ramp, we converted all of those overhead lights to solar lighting.
Right.
We tried to do that at another particular boat ramp, and the infrastructure just wouldn't allow for it. We're looking at that at some other facilities as well. So integrating that into future improvements, absolutely.
Great. And finally, I'm really looking forward to this additional park ranger, because I know in my district, they wear our office out first of the week with what they call vagabonds, squatting at the boat ramps and camped out, living there, bathing in the ramps and all these things. And the sheriff can't be there all the time.
Right.
And we understand that, so I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Commissioner Delary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Rick, I think you and your staff do a phenomenal job with the tools that we give you.
Thank you.
And sometimes I'm amazed at how well you do. All your staff does just truly, truly phenomenal. I hear nothing but compliments from the citizens about how they love our parks, our trails, our libraries. It just goes on and on. And I'm looking forward to the deep dive that the county manager is making. So I'm not going to get into the CIP questions, because that's what I believe that you're going to be doing over the next couple of months. But in the budget highlights, and I know that some of the commissioners talked about it, with the Wekiva Golf Course irrigation replacement, you don't need to turn the page. We're good. I would like to know, as we move forward with that improvement, how much water we're actually going to be saving, because that is an element of irrigation. So if that can be tracked, it'd be greatly appreciated. With the trail edge restoration, is that all the trails, or is that per mile? Or?
That gets us going. That's
Excuse me?
probably, that gets us going.
I realize
on the
that,
project,
because I can't fathom $185,000 doing all our trails.
That's correct.
And so if you could articulate, not today, but somehow, how many miles does that buy us?
Certainly.
Or what percentage could it buy us? So that's going to be an occurring number as we move forward, because we all do ride the trails quite a bit, and the trail edge is in lack and in need of restoration. And you and I have had these conversations for the past couple of years. So I'd like to know what percentage and, what can we be expecting in future years. But all in all, I think you're all doing a phenomenal job. Your staff is truly amazing on many levels, so thank you.
I agree with you. Thank you.
I cannot take credit, as much as Commissioner Delary wanted to say we all ride the trails a lot. I don't. I know a lot of people love them, but I'm not your girl. I'm not. But I know they're great, and other people love them a lot.
Maybe we can both go out together?
Field trip.
Maybe, yeah. Well, yeah, we could do that.
I'm not seeing it.
Hey, why don't we get the horses and we'll go out and ride the trails out in my district?
I do have a legitimate question.
Sure.
So we talk as a board an awful lot about water quality and water usage, and at our the sustainability symposium that your team hosted for us out at the Extension office with the Outside Collaborative, there was a shocking slide that was put on the screen about water consumption, like residential water consumption in certain areas of the county. And one of the things that I know we've talked about, and I certainly am, a huge proponent of, is educating our community as best we can. Those numbers are only going to come down with education and support. And so one of the things that I've kind of beat the drum about the last few years is the untapped or not fully tapped potential of our extension services. And they do a remarkable job with the resources that they're given. But educating and getting out in front of the community and being out there costs money. And I know they want to be incredibly fiscally conservative and, do a lot with a little. But another year of no additional funds for educating on sustainability issues or water quality or water consumption, when that's something that we talk about all the time on this board. So unless the county manager has another way that we plan to do that type of education or some other army that we're going to mobilize, I'd love to hear us talk about how we can do that. I think that's direction this board has given before, and I don't know. Commissioner Zumbauer?
You're absolutely correct, spot on. I've always had a thought process, whether it makes sense or not, in that realm, is, I think you can leverage with some of the private partners, fertilizer, feed companies, agricultural companies, to leverage maybe funding some of these like community seminars and bringing their experts in with our experts and giving some kind of meet and greet for gardening and best practices and all that. A lot of these corporations have expert scientists on staff in the ag arena that can be very helpful, and most of them are willing to give their time and give back to the community and give talks and help with that information. So just a thought from that aspect of leveraging the private sector.
Right. And I certainly want to make sure that our team doesn't take away from my comment that I think that they are either not doing a good job or that they are not equipped. That's not it at all. I just know how equipped they are and what a good job they're doing. And if we need to provide additional resources to expand that opportunity, whether it's partnerships or whatever. Commissioner Herr?
I think the partnerships that exist in the area where the water consumption is happening, which happens to be in District 5, and I live right in the middle of it, it is with the homeowners associations, and that is going to take time, investment to go out and talk to folks. And I do think that there is, because we also put reclaimed water in there years ago, and we all know that reclaimed is not performing the way we thought reclaimed would perform, but the perception is that I'm using reclaimed water and it's not a problem. That's the absolute perception that we have. And it can be fixed. Really smart people live in that area, but the information's not out there.
Right.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Durer? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question before we move to the next one, if I may. We were handed the vacant position report, so thank you very much for that. It's not on yours, Rick. This is for everybody.
Countywide.
This is countywide.
Oh, I was going to tell you where we're at, but that's
Okay.
yeah.
So I want to just understand this. Totals 147.43 vacant positions currently. And I've got a couple questions about that. Number one, does this include the new ask? Does not, okay. Also want to ask, are these all necessary positions to be filled? In other words, have they been audited to ensure that efficiencies haven't already come to bear, that we don't need these staff members? And then finally, understanding that there are multiple job descriptions for the same position. I understand that. If I go out and look at the job postings, is it going to resemble anything close to this?
Nope.
I don't think it will.
Right, and just to answer a few of those, and that is actually what we're going through now, because I've had some of the same questions about, especially classifications or positions that have been vacant for long periods of time, and actually going and doing another review analysis. So a couple of the key areas that we're looking at now are the Public Works area as well as environmental services. The other departments, you will notice that they have the big areas you'll notice Public Works and environmental services.
Sure.
The others are better, and they actually have, they've already went through that type of analysis. So you're going to see a revamp of this,
Okay.
and some changes that are going to occur. It may even happen later this summer or early fall. Christina Brandolini, did I get that right?
You did.
We always
That is
say that,
exactly
right? And I have been talking about this for quite some time. The department heads and I have had a conversation about this over the last month as well. And so you will you will see an improvement, and possibly, especially in some of those harder to recruit areas, a different shift of how, position-wise and what we're doing with those. We may even combine a couple of those.
So I think what I'm hearing is we're going to clean this up and have a little more clarity of what
Yes.
it really indicates.
Yes.
Great, because I've been requesting vacancy reports since the day I arrived. The last one I got was August of 2022. I've tried to get clarity throughout, and I've looked at the job postings, and it makes no sense.
No.
And I'm not saying anything's done on purpose.
Nope.
I think it just needs to be cleaned up
hasn't
from a
been-
management position, perspective, and get some clarity on what we're really doing there.
And the other thing I'm going to actually put in, and Mr. Jackson and I have actually talked about this, and I've talked about it with Christina as well. We're creating, I'm going to say, I put it out there, they just look at me sometimes, but this is another initiative, and knowing that, only been here about a little over 90 days, is provide the board a quarterly report, and in this report, it's going to give a snapshot picture of where we are financially, both on our revenues and our expenditures. It's going to show a vacancy report on there, so you can compare. As we start doing this, you'll be able to compare quarters from previous years to this year, and then it's also going to have a CIP section in there, too, that gives you an update on our CIP program and projects, or anything of interest that the board wants to keep an eye on. I felt that quarterly is a lot manageable for us, so we can, it takes some time to put these reports together, but once we get into that system, that you will all get a report of that. It will be transparent. We'll put it on our website as well, so the public can see that as well. So that's coming. We're targeting the first quarter of the new fiscal year. Close this one out. We're going to get together, put this report together, and get it out by the first quarter.
That's great news, and I sincerely appreciate that. There's management is better served if they can react sooner rather than later. And if you're only getting the numbers once a year, a lot of times it's way too late.
Right.
So.
And then add the
good.
dashboards that I know Commissioner Hurd all about.
Yeah. with the graph
Yes,
trends would be
yes.
helpful.
Yeah. So it's Commissioner Herr, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break after Commissioner Herr asks her question and come back at 10:50.
So, first of all, that would be a super easy dashboard to pull out of the HRIS system and flow into a dashboard, and at that point, it should be real-time and not have to be quarterly or manual, and that probably should be the goal. I do just want to provide the opportunity for clarification with regard to animal services, because this shows that there was an opening, and we earlier indicated that there's not an opening, and I don't think there is an opening.
There was one opening, the position was posted and it closed yesterday. So that's the issue with the reports that we have now. So we pull everything out of J.D. Edwards from a vacancy standpoint. But if people leave today, it's not going to be reflected in the system until probably the next pay period. We also had a new hired class yesterday, so those people will get put in the system tomorrow, the next day, then the system has to update itself. So I tried to go through last night and make sure that everybody that started yesterday is reflected in there, but again, that's J.D. Edwards isn't real time, and so then we have to manually go through and anybody that's in process right now. So I did try to update it as best I could.
So I appreciate that. I think the solution to that in the interim is to put a date produced and a date of JDE in here, just so that we understand that. And we all know what we're looking at. It doesn't look like you're saying something different than we're seeing on paper. It will just solve the problem. Put it on the top front page, to be clear, because we don't turn the page.
Sure.
And for me, I understand the lag between
All the movement, yeah.
hitting the streets, hired,
Yep.
filled position, I got all that.
If there aren't any other questions on this, we'll take that 10-minute recess and come back at 10:50. Thanks. Welcome back. Thank you all. It's 10:55. We didn't do too badly there for that little break, and we're going to come back, and we have Development Services that's here. Thank you.
Good morning, Rebecca Hammock.
And Rebecca, you're going to have to pull that way close to you. Or you could do the karaoke like Alan Harris did this morning.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Rebecca Hammock, Development Services. With me, I have Sandy Riley. She is the Building Division Manager. And I have Lori Meeks. She's our Financial Manager for the Development Services Department. And we also have Mary Moskowitz, and she is the Planning Division Manager, just in case we have any specific questions related to their divisions. So within Development Services, we have the Planning and Development Division, the Building Division, and our Impact Fee Program. We also have code enforcement components that are part of Planning and Development as well as Building. In Building, we do construction, unpermitted construction, and within Planning and Development, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Sheriff's Office, and we do code enforcement for zoning violations, for site plan violations, and then we also use the code officers that are housed or employed by the Sheriff's Office, but we also have planners who are code enforcement officers within the Planning and Development Division. So in terms of programs, the Planning and Development Division, we administer the Comprehensive Plan and the Land Development Code. And we also have the Impact Fee Program and financial oversight as part of our business office within Development Services. We also have the Mass Transit Program through Links included in our budget. And Mary actually is a member of the Oversight Committee for Links. And for building, we do building permit review, inspections, and code enforcement for unpermitted construction. For accomplishments for the Planning Division, I know most of you are well aware of these because you've been right along with us on these. We completed the evaluation and appraisal report for the comprehensive plan last year. We are now in the process of preparing the ear-based amendments, which will be the actual text amendments to the comprehensive plan. We are getting assistance from a consultant who is helping with that, and we are also working with the other departments on the various elements to get those updated. And we are also nearing completion of the Land Development Code. We're hoping to have that adopted before the end of the year. And as you can see, we have a slight decrease in our rezones, our site plans, and our variances between 2020, 2021, and the 21-22 fiscal year. For the Building Division, we've been working on a technology update. We completed the actual technology study, and we're using that study for an RFP that was issued for new software for our permitting and land management software. So we have gone through the RFP process. We've selected 5 companies that are now doing vendor demonstrations. We've had 4 vendor demonstrations so far. We have 1 left to go, and then once that's completed, we are going to narrow it down to 2 and then have individual interviews with those 2 companies. Other accomplishments in the Building Division include holding free continuing education training for design professionals, building code administrators, inspectors, and plans examiners, and we actually invite those types of officials from other jurisdictions, and they come here for that training. Our building official co-chaired the Florida Roofing and Sheet Metal Association seminar, and our staff in the Building Division streamlined the private provider package to make that a little bit more user-friendly. Here you can also see our permits and inspections have slightly decreased from year to year. We're expecting a slight decrease in the coming year as well. So you can see that the number of permits issued and the number of inspections has decreased. And then I'll hand it back to Tim.
Thank you. The Planning and Development Department's total current budget is $20.7 million. For fiscal '24, proposing $22.2 million, a $1.5 million increase. If we start at the bottom, the grants and aid amount is totally related to the funding that we provide to Links, our mass transit system, so that makes up $1.2 million of their overall increase. If you exclude Links, the Development Services Department's total increase is 3.3%. They have no request for new FTEs, and the reduction in operating is primarily due to 2 one-time projects that were approved in the current FY23. This slide shows the total funding that supports the department. The general fund is 13%, the building fund is 33%, and the mass transit fund includes $2 million of gas taxes and then a $9 million transfer from the general fund. This slide shows base budgets, which also includes links, $19.8 million up to $21.2 for a total increase of 7.3%. There's 86 FTEs in the Development Services Department with no new requests for new positions.
Thank you. So some of our budget highlights, what we're requesting this year in the budget includes a study for consulting services to identify potential rural enclaves within the county, within the urban area of the county. Currently, through the evaluation or the year-based amendments to the comprehensive plans, we are going to be creating policies to outline when something would qualify as a rural enclave. So we're going to have text within the comprehensive plan. So once we've established that within the comprehensive plan, the next step is to identify potential rural enclaves within the urban area. We do have some in mind already, but this would we'd create the rural enclaves within the comprehensive plan. These would identify them, and then we'd have to do community outreach and then obviously create an overlay on those identified properties. The other item that I had already briefly spoken about was the building program technology project. That's the new software. We are moving additional funds into the technology line item so that we have the appropriate amount of funds to support that software. And then the next item that we wanted to discuss was the Attainable Housing Trust Fund. Currently, when the county adopted the short-term vacation rental registry, there is provisions within there that the revenue could go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It would have to be done by resolution. So what we wanted to get guidance from the board today is we also have the Abandoned Foreclosure Registry. When that was created, it wasn't anticipated. We didn't have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund at the time. So the question to the board is, do we want to have both of those revenue streams go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? And I think Tim can speak a little bit more on that, more specifics.
Sure, yeah. This is something the county manager, I believe, is proposing. Last fiscal year, we collected $227,000 across these two revenues, and we are proposing to put those revenues directly into the Attainable Housing Trust Fund that we're maintaining through Community Services.
And then the last item, the Development Services Coordination. We currently have a vacant position, the Deputy Director for the department, and I believe instead of filling that position, I believe there's been discussion about reclassing that position to more of a Development Review Coordinator, and I think the county manager has some more information on that.
Yeah, and actually, we haven't chosen the title yet, but as you all know, when I was realigning and aligning the organization, one of the other pieces that I saw that we definitely could use a review of is our development review and services process, because we have so many hands in the bucket, from public works to fire to building and development services. I'm reviewing that now. In fact, our Deputy County Manager, Tricia Johnson, this is her project. She's working on it with Rebecca and Rebecca's team. And so later this summer, we're coming back with you, and I'll just do it one-on-one probably with you about what the plan is. It's basically to streamline the process, create a concierge-type program for our businesses that bring in projects, and having our staff really understand what that means to our tax base of our community, and create some more like an ombudsman type program that and we have it happens in every organization I have been at, that a project comes through and they may get a comment from Public Works, but then they don't get anything from another area. We're streamlining that process, that we have a person that, one, understands the process and understands the comments as well, and to be able to communicate right back with that development. So
Commissioner
that's in the
Zumbauer?
works.
Okay, great.
So to a couple of the things I think that are being asked here, I'm fine. I think it's a direct nexus of the money being funneled to the obtainable or affordable housing program. On that same note, I would suggest we reach back out to the vendor that are running these programs. In their original pitch to the county, they have the ability for additional low-cost finance for affordable housing. And they're currently doing it with Duval County. They're also doing it over in the Tampa area, where they've partnered and brought private money in for affordable housing. So it's something we should look into. I'm glad to hear about the development review process. It's probably one of the largest complaints I get in my office, that we can't get things moved quick enough, as well as redundancy of being asked for the same things over and over. I personally am not looking to give direction. I'm going to look to management to make that decision. My expectation would be is you make those observations with input from what we're hearing from our offices. You take the appropriate action. I don't need to bless that. That's just my 2 cents worth on that. So, but we do need to be, all of our departments, really, we should be running this county as our citizens are the customers. Our businesses are the customers. We should treat them as if we want them to continue to come back. So whatever that takes, I would look for you to spearhead that and let that trickle down through the organization. Right. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Awesome. Commissioner Herr and then Commissioner Constantine.
I'm going to pick up where Commissioner Zimbauer left off and say, and our employees are our customers as well, because I think we're not talking about that right now, but worthy of saying. And I love the concept that with you here now, we move into governance and away from management. I think that's a big leap forward for the organization and the citizens that we serve. I concur that the move to put those funds into Attainable Housing Trust Fund makes all the sense in the world. I would say with regard to the permitting improvement, software is not going to be the solution that improves that. It's got to be a customer service focus. So the software can aid that customer service focus, but we need to change the deliverable and how we think about the end users. And you've already said that, but permitting was one of the reasons why I'm sitting here. It was a hell of a roof. And so I would also just like to give a big shout out to Mary. Thank you for serving on the Links Oversight Committee. You are a great contributor in that room and always keep me very well informed, and I appreciate that. And Rebecca, you and your team do phenomenal work. I have the greatest admiration for the most unflappable human on earth, and that's you.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll just step up to the podium and be very calm, cool, and collected while somebody's screaming at me. It's awesome. You're remarkable. We're lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Commissioner Commissioner Constantine had a comment, question?
Since we were asked to, give our opinion on the county manager's suggestion, which, when we were talking about the short-term rental registry, we talked about this. As Commissioner Zimbauer said, it is a direct nexus, and as the short-term rentals continue to climb at an astronomical rate here in all of Central Florida, but Seminole County also specifically, I concur. The hardest thing for most people to get into housing is being able to pay the first and last month's deposit. And if we had a fund that would help them, I think that would be great. So I am totally supportive of your suggestion, Mr. Gray.
Feedback, Commissioner Delary?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I think the direction that, I'm not going to repeat everything that everyone said, except that you're all doing a phenomenal job. I think that the direction we're going in is the correct direction. I have no issue with that. I would like to, at some point, talk a little bit about the 101 fund and see what the projections are with that and how that's being spent, but I'm sure that's coming up. That's it.
So I would ask, how much is being generated from the abandoned foreclosure registry? Like, what kind of money are we talking about?
Tim has it.
Let me jump in. It is increasing, and last full fiscal year was
Say
$227,000.
220 something, yeah.
Okay.
For the that's for the short-term rental and the abandoned
That's
foreclosure.
combined.
Both lines.
Okay. I also would concur with adding that toward the Attainable Housing Trust Fund. Is it still the board's responsibility to approve new positions, though? Does the county manager bring those to the board?
Help me with that. I've asked this
No.
question as well.
Board action is required to approve any new FTE.
Okay, so while I love that we're giving the county manager the autonomy to do that, it is the responsibility still of the board to approve new positions.
It
Just
was
want to
the
make sure.
changing, so let's be clear about that, because this was
Right.
changing the
Yes.
classification of a position.
What I have identified a position in Development Services, our deputy director, that we are going to reclass this position to that coordination.
And maybe that's a gray area, so we might look to the attorney's office to clarify that role for the board when things like that are changing. I'm not opposed to giving you the autonomy to do it, but if it should be something, a box that we check.
Of course, Chairman, and we'll look into that and confirm with you.
Okay, that'd be great. The only other thing that I would just say about positions, talking about staffing, is I still, because you're not asking for any new FTEs, I still hear that permits are taking a really long time to turn around. And so if it's not an FTE thing, what is it? And if it is an FTE thing, let's ask for it. And because I think one of the reasons why, I happen to know quite a few people who are like, I'm not going to pull the permit because it takes so long. And so if we were to speed up the process and maybe have it be a little more customer service friendly, more people might feel like they would pull permits. And it's scary to me to think of the amount of work that is being done without permits, because I will say again, having those inspectors at my own home for various projects, they've caught things that no one would have caught, and it was a blessing to have had their involvement. So, anyway.
So, is it okay if I respond?
Please, yeah.
In terms of positions, the J.D. Edwards report shows we have 6 vacant positions, but 4 of those are in process of being filled. We have a new permit technician coming on board, and we have a new inspector coming on board. Both of those people start on July 3rd. We're interviewing for another building inspector, and then we also have a planner position that we've just recently done a notice of selection on. So technically, we'll have 2 vacant positions once we're fully staffed, and one of those is the deputy director position that we're proposing to reclass, and the other is a building inspector that we're holding on to determine if it will be needed, because we are seeing a slowdown in the number of permits. But once we're fully staffed, we'll kind of see where we are. I would say in terms of timing, our current software has a significant lag time, and so a lot of times unfortunately we do have staff and technicians sitting there waiting for the software to get where it needs to go. We also have a lot of times where contractors will be sitting on it, and it'll be in their queue for a significant number of time, and then the property owner is like, what's going on? And a lot of times the contractor will say, well, it's with the county, and then we go into the system, and that's not quite true.
Right. There's always that.
Yes. But then, of course, there are a lot of requirements that go along with it, and a lot of times when people submit permits, they won't have everything that they're supposed to submit, and then so we have to return it back for them to give us the correct information, and that does slow things down. I will say with some of the vendor demonstrations that we've seen so far, I think there would be a significant improvement in terms of the customer service, in terms of speed, and just I think it's much more user-friendly with what we're seeing, and there's a lot more communication. Because a lot of times what we have heard is people will get an email saying, it's in your queue, or you need to submit this, and somehow it goes into their junk folder, or they miss the email. And so a lot of these new systems, there's better communication.
Got it. That's
So that
fantastic.
should help.
That's great. Thank you. Commissioner Zembauer?
I'll try to be brief, because I think this is a much larger topic that you raise. I as well get a lot of those complaints, but I've actually went and spent a lot more time than I really care to really understand and figure out where the hiccups and problems might or might not be. The one wild card here is the health department. They have to bless setbacks from septics and wells, and I will tell you that they're understaffed and maybe not as responsive, and our folks have to wait on that blessing before they can move forward. And the other thing that I notice is there's not a consistency between answers that are often given to our customers that are in conflict when one employee's told somebody to go do X, and they do X, and they come back, and another employee says, well, you got to do Z also. I think there's a lot of just continuity that lacks there and some consistency and guidance that needs to drill down through. So each and every customer is getting the same answer. I went through the process myself here 2 years ago on pulling a permit. It was a very eye-opening experience to me. I think there's some issues we need to address on how things are decided. By example, I have one right now where there's a remodel that is being suggested, and because of the codes that are involved from the state that we adopt, that if it goes over 50% of the value of the structure, they have to meet all the new codes, which means major dollars for the individual to do this, except we're using the property appraiser's value as the benchmark of what the 50% is, when we all know that's not even remotely close. Now, this constituent is being asked to go spend $7,500 to $10,000 to get an alternative appraisal on the structure, when we all know exactly what a square footage costs to build in this county. Makes zero sense.
And you're on it.
Yes. We've got some struggles that we need to deal with there.
Yeah, and in that one, that is the floodplain ordinance. That's actually a requirement of the floodplain ordinance.
Sure.
And it's also because we're part of the community rating system.
Right.
So.
But I'm not a fan of making a constituent spend $7,500 to $10,000 to get a value that any one of us and everybody in our building department, or at least our building official, should be able to sit down and go, hey, this is what it costs to build this building a square foot. It's that simple.
Commissioner Hur?
As you transition to the new software in that department, if there's any expense that needs to be added to this to have somebody actually extract the data from our current system and have you fully functional on the new system, so there's not a transitional process where we're blaming the old system for another year, I would absolutely support
agree.
putting that in there.
That is included.
Yeah.
That's
And
fantastic.
if I could add just to promise won't be long, and that's exactly the process that we're going through right now. We don't know if it's more FTEs that we need in there. That's why Tricia and Rebecca is reviewing this whole thing. When I say I'm coming back to you, it's to tell you how this new and improved process is going to be and how we're streamlining it. Absolutely, Commissioner Hur, I get that software, and Rebecca and I have had this conversation, software does not solve the problem. Is that we have to make sure everyone understands what customer service is and how we get that information out to them. So we are on it. It's one of the things that we've identified. The team is working on it, and you'll see progress happening in the next couple months.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right, Rebecca, what else do you have for us?
That's it for me.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, our next department is Information Services. Mr. Garutzas.
Good morning, Chairman Lockhart, Commissioners, County Attorney, County Manager. For the record, James Grutzos, Chief Information Officer. Sorry, I'm fading back and forth. I got to put it right here. Joining me is Laura Reamer, our department's fiscal coordinator. I want to thank her for her support during the budget. I also want to thank Jennifer Stevens and Tim Jex from the Budget Office. They helped create our budget, and thank you for your assistance on that. So we are now information technology. We are not information services. This will be our name for the next few years, and I'm sure someone will want to change it back to information services. I think we've gone back and forth a number of times, but we are now information technology. It's more appropriate for what we're doing today. We are at our heart, a service organization. We support all the functions of Seminole County through the technology we provide. Thanks to the board, we have made great strides in moving from a break-fix organization to one that's investing in technology either through the projects that they've funded or through staffing our department. We've moved, again, last year we talked about being a break-fix to being an advocacy, and we have made great strides over the last 12 months doing that. We are basically split up into two functions. We have an operations function and we have a new solutions delivery function. The operations function is focused on keeping what we've built running, whether it's from receiving 12,000 calls for service in the IT area to over 15,000 citizens calls last year. That is also during the time of the emergency activations. Our focus is supporting this county 24/7. We are not Monday through Friday, as Rick mentioned and Alan's mentioned, as Chief Kinley will mention, we're running 24 hours a day. Environmental Services has folks out, traffic engineering. Business doesn't stop at 5 p.m. Our Solutions Delivery Group is focused on aligning with the departments. Last year, we discussed the Business Relationship Group as part of the key strategic priorities. That group is being rolled out as we speak, and as well as developing and delivering projects that you all have been funding. As far as our accomplishments, thank you. We completed 51 projects of various levels of effort. Some were trivial, some were extensive, that were implemented for the departments during fiscal year '22. You can see some of the county-wide efforts that we've done, including agenda automation, getting rid of the old phone provider, Windstream. I don't mind saying their name since we're not very happy with them, but we moved to AT&T, and you heard the clerk and many other constitutionals thanking you for getting us off that, and since then, knock on particle board, we have not had a phone issue like we were having previous to that. So that's been a great accomplishment. We are replacing a number of old systems that, this idea of technology debt that we've talked about, we've moved forward with those, and we accomplished them in '22. On to you, Tim.
Thank you. The Information Technology Department's current budget is $12.6 million. For fiscal '24, we're proposing $13.4 million, which is a 6.2% increase. There are no new FTEs being proposed, but the personal services accounts are increasing due to 10 vacant positions in the adopted FY23 budget for desk site support, which are now filled. The department's funding is supported, it's entirely budgeted in the general fund. This slide reflects the chargeback to the user funds based on services provided. There's dedicated FTEs in certain areas for fire fund, environmental services, and you can see just how how diverse the funding is for the department. This slide excludes one-time projects. Information technology's budget is $11.7 million, growing to $12.3 million, which is a 4.9% overall increase. There's 70 FTEs in the department, no new positions being requested.
And as far as highlights, because our budget is basically, incremental expenses, we don't really have any additional items. We did want to go over what we're planning to do for the remainder of FY23 going into '24. One of the areas is key strategic priorities. This board has mandated us to get a number of items done. We did the insourcing this year, so those open positions have been filled. It's been very successful. I think, we've got our sea legs now, and we're actually providing better service at the same cost, which is a good story. We've also implemented the technology training. We stood up the technology training group. We're actually briefing the county manager next month because that was an item that the board wanted us to become more proficient in training our departments on how to use the technology that we have. That's been a common lament, and I agree with you that we throw out technology and we go, here you go figure it out. And that's not a winning formula for success. So we'll be briefing the county manager. We've hired two new, those positions are filled, and we've been working with the Human Resources Department on making that part of the portfolio of training things that employees can leverage. We've also staffed up the Business Relationship Office, and we are now meeting with the departments to partner with them so that we can be an advocate for their things as opposed to kind of sitting back waiting for requests to come in. And then whatever projects that the board approves through FY '24, we would be supporting them. So I think with the staffing that's been approved and with currently what the county manager is looking at, we can support those efforts with the staffing that we have. And that ends my presentation.
All right, thank you. Any comments, County Manager?
No, thank you.
Commissioners? Commissioner Zembauer, then Commissioner Delary.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say thank you. We've come a long way since 2018 when I arrived with technology. We still got a long way to go to really get, let's talk about dashboard programs and so forth. And I think this question is more for Tim. I'm going to slide one of the funding sources. I tried to break down the line items that you gave us. I'm trying to understand this billable units that we're billing out to the Transportation Fund, Water and Sewer, 911 and all those. Are we actually capturing the entirety of the cost for that time, all in, for the employees' staff time spent?
Yeah, we are capturing the entire cost of the service provided. We break the information technology department down by services for network, telephones, so that's how it's charged out, is by the type of service. So for desk side support, we have a PC inventory, and so each department has X number of PCs, and that creates a percentage that we use to charge out the cost of that service.
So that would assume that we're really not capturing the entire cost of that hour spent for that employee's wage, salary, and benefits.
I would argue that we are capturing full cost.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So you've got it fully burned in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I need. I'd like to see that whenever.
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the years, I'm sure you've heard a lot of different comments from this board or other boards of things that have not been happening. I will tell you that it's very difficult to make change sometimes, especially when it comes to a system that has been entrenched into the county for a long time. I can tell you that we've been seeing a significant change, and I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank your staff for their willingness to make change, and so a lot should be said for that. With technology being one of the big things that's happening in the world today, it's very difficult sometimes to get people. I just want to make sure that the county manager understands that sometimes we have to compete with the private sector. And even though we're not the private sector, we have other assets that we can offer people that the private sector may not be able to. And I know that with your leadership, Mr. Gray, as well as James and some other folks, that we will accomplish those post-haste and be willing and have the ability to make change. And I want to thank you, James, for your department, all the changes that you've made over the past couple of years. And I know more needs to be made, but we should also celebrate the wins that we've had, and we need to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Herr?
This is a little bit narrow, but I was at a community meeting last night, and we were handing out a list of the public works projects that were associated with that community over the last period of time, and it was noted that our vendors, so if we subcontract maintenance of any sort out, are not on that list. And that's what I thought. They're not, so that's a different list.
Yes.
And that's a future maintenance schedule. That's not a list of what's been done. And so as you do your business relationship team with that department, I would have a keen interest in making sure that vendors are held accountable to data enter their own stuff. I mean, they should be held accountable to that. We shouldn't be paying somebody to key the information, that when we're hiring a lawn maintenance team to go out there and maintain our retention ponds, that They actually are recording back to us that they've been there and what date they were there and whatever other data elements you want to have, and that we're facilitating that through some sort of software that makes sense. Just a suggestion, because right now, I think that my ask is going to happen manually, which makes me cringe.
Yep. Point taken.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Garutzis? I'm a little disappointed that you didn't list as one of the major accomplishments your award.
I thought about presenting the Chairman's Award as the 5-star service award that you presented to me, the first ever recipient of it. It was a major award that I received, and I'm very proud of it. And if you all want to come to my office and see it, I replaced the picture of my 3 children with it, because it's so important for excellent service.
So I'm going to brag on James for a minute, because I had a meltdown the day before the State of the County. I had all of my changes in my speech edited. It was all done and ready to go, and I opened it up, and none of the changes had saved, and I had worked on it for quite some time. And I panicked, and I called Tricia first, and then she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. She did that. Call James.
I'll come comfort you.
Yep, and James walked me first off the ledge and then talked me through how to go back and find the various versions of the document, and he saved the day. So for that, we gave the first ever Chairman's 5-star award.
I did ask, we do send a survey when we provide service, and wanted to get a 5 stars, because my supervisor doesn't appreciate anything less than 5 stars. So she was very gracious to give me 5 stars. So thank you, Chairman.
You did a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you, for sure. Thank you all very much. I'm sure if we have any follow-up questions, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more for this morning.
Welcome, Chief Kinley.
Good morning. So hopefully I don't have to open the big book. Thank you.
The clicker?
The clicker. Oh. So good morning. It still is morning. Would just like to introduce not only myself, Matt Kinley, Fire Chief for the record. Also have Deputy Chief Ben DeCure, Chief of Operations, Assistant Chief Christina Diaz, also our Fire Marshal, and Ryan Schweitzer, Resource Manager or Master of Complicated Math and Finance. So as you can see on the first slide, this is how we are budgetarily broken out within the fire department. That's not necessarily our organizational tree, but this is how we are budgetarily broken out. So where to go? So just to start off, obviously we're in the emergency services business, and business unfortunately continues to grow. As you can see in here, our total alarms, 911 calls, transports, everything is increasing. With the transports, just would like to point out that that's one of the areas where we get some reimbursement for our budget, and part of our budget is about $10 million that we receive back on EMS transports. In the fire side of the business, you see pre-incident values, losses, and values saved. I would just like to point out that we saved the citizens of Seminole County $121 million. That's directly related to what we've done in the recent years, is increasing our ISO rating to 1. That's getting us on scenes faster. That means water's on the fire faster, less property is being burned, and we're able to get on these fires and put them out prior to them getting extended so far that we're going to get a total loss. Just an example of that is we had a fire down a boat dealership on 1792, and we got there so fast that we were able to put the fire out before it extended to the rest of their inventory. It saved that business.
It's going slow.
So this area really is highlighting fire prevention. One of the reasons that I have Chief Diaz here. I get asked routinely by many what keeps me up at night, and the prevention side of the business is really what keeps me up at night. Knowing that we have over 10,000 businesses out there that need inspected keeps me up at night. You'll see in our FTE request that's reflected in that request. New inspections and plan reviews, that's really the easy side of the business. We do a very good job of getting those processed through in a very expedient amount of time. But when you look on here, we've increased our existing inspections almost 20%. To a little over 5,000. Again, I point out that we have over 10,000 businesses within Seminole County that need inspected. And when you're talking about inspections, very, very seldom is there only one. There's usually a follow-up, at least one follow-up. So that increases to 20,000. Again, that's the part of this business that really keeps me awake. Now it jumped. Accomplishments this year, our ISO maintenance. We continue to strive to keep that ISO 1 classification. We just recently, as you all are very aware, had our CAS reaccreditation. That's for the ambulance, the EMS side of the house. That was our third reaccreditation. We continue to knock it out of the park on that. We're continuing down the route with our Center for Public Safety Excellence accreditation. That really looks at the fires. It looks at everything that we do. As fire EMS, we're all hazards fire department. They dig very, very deep into everything that we do. We're targeting February of 2024 to achieve that accreditation. It's interesting talking with the team that has already been engaged with us. When we did our community stakeholder meeting, I asked them, so what do you think? And he said, you're an accredited fire department that just hasn't done the paperwork yet. So we're moving forward very fast on that. Safer grant sustainment. If you remember, about a year and a half ago, we got a little over $7 million for a 3-year Safer grant to hire 30 firefighters. That has been directly related to the improvements that we've seen in our response. For the board, thank you for allowing us to purchase vehicles early. We've looked in hindsight, and the 2 times that you've allowed us to do that, we've saved the taxpayers over $1 million being able to purchase early in an untold amount of lead time. We are the envy of many other fire departments when talking to other fire chiefs and their inability to get their governing body to do that. That has saved us, hopefully, to get out of this period where we have such tremendous lead times. We also implemented the engineer position on our fire trucks and towers and squad. As you know, was in the last collective bargaining agreement. That's just another instance where we're trying to protect those apparatus, putting our most senior and well-educated and skilled firefighters driving those apparatus. It's keeping those trucks from being in accidents and keeping the citizens safe. Another accomplishment was in the past year with the hurricanes. So we have a drone team, which does a lot of stuff for us, not only with search and rescue, but identifying fires and their locations within structures, giving us that 360 view. But we pivoted during the hurricanes and teamed them up with the damage assessment teams, which allowed the county to be able to document that damage very, very quickly, which got us on the front end of all of those reimbursements that we were putting in for. Another thank you to the board, allowing us to use some ARPA money to purchase some high water vehicles. You can see this is a halfway done one of the Acellas that we have purchased. We're being told beginning of July is when we will receive them. Excellent excellent resource, replacing trucks that are from 1968 Vietnam era. Tremendous changes in being able to go through 50 inches of water instead of 32. The capacity for getting people out of their residence going from 12 to 28, and we're putting a lift gate on the back of this, which will help us being able to get people that aren't very mobile instead of our firemen trying to lift them over their head, which they do, but trying to work a little smarter, not harder. Some service level enhancements, so things that don't cost money, where we've tried to improve. Pre-alerting. In other words, when a 911 calls in, the amount of time that it takes for that call taker to dispatch a unit. We went to the pre-alerting model with keywords: fire, cardiac arrest, stroke, many other different keywords. As soon as that keyword hits, we dispatch the units out of the door. We get an initial response going to go mitigate that problem, and then add units or take them away as the call taker gets more information. We started that in 2021, and we saw through that year a 56% reduction in the time that it took to get the units going out the door. In 2022, we reduced it another 14%. That's a total of 62% that we've reduced that call taking time to getting units going to the calls. Again, that translates to us getting there faster, getting water on the fire, starting compressions, breathing for people. It's really been a tremendous improvement in the way that we've been doing business. Another thing that we've instituted during this current fiscal year is the Kimbo Cup. So turnout times have always been a passion of mine. Getting from out of the seat or doing whatever you're doing at the station to on the truck and out the door, that is the one thing that we have complete control over. There's no other barrier other than your motivation. So Lieutenant Drury, Kim Drury, is who we've named the cup after, who had that go baby attitude and was known for getting out of the door very quickly. Since we've instituted that, and firemen are obviously very competitive, we've seen a 20% reduction in our turnout time. Again, things that don't cost money that we're trying to get out of the door and get to these scenes as quickly as possible. Community paramedicine, I know you've heard plenty about that. Just some stats on that since you asked for this to be implemented. We've visited over 3,500 homes. We've enrolled over 205 people and graduated 60 out of the system. And when you graduate out of the system, that means that we've connected you with that definitive care that you need going forward. There's very few things that the firefighter sitting at the table really look at and say, that was excellent. Every one of them has said that this has been an excellent addition. It's reduced our repeat callers, and for our firefighters, and I was talking with Shane Rogers about this yesterday, that's closing the loop of that care. Where before, we just go, we fix whatever problem that they have going on right now. Now they're seeing that they're getting connected to that care to actually solve the issues that they have. This is a tremendous program. I'm so thrilled that it's been instituted and will be around for years to come. Station construction, Station 39 out in the Paola area. We should be breaking ground on that in the very near future. Fire Station 25 in the Castleberry area, Wilshire, by the old bowling alley. We're at 95% plans on that, still working with Castleberry to transfer legally the land over, but we're still working through the permitting process. They've become a partner in on that and coming in as the owner, and so that's allowing us to continue to move forward. Fire Station 23, we've purchased the land for that in the Howe Branch area. It's directly across the street from current Station 23, so there won't be any changes in service to the citizens out there. Station 11, the latest for that station in Altamont is opening in August.
No.
We'll see how that ends up playing out. I'm sure Commissioner Delary has an opinion on that. And lastly, the hazmat alert. So we have STEMI alerts, cardiac alerts, stroke alerts, all these different alerts that we have with the hospitals to get them moving, knowing what is coming in, to get the right people in place when we get there. We've instituted the hazmat alert. We've been working for that for actually quite a few years, working with the state on the protocols. And we had a recent call in the past year where we took a person that had been exposed to a hazardous material. We were working them with the amazing drugs that we have, which are off of our tox box. And when we got to the hospital, they weren't quite ready for it. So we stayed there for 2 hours and continued that care until they were able to get everything spooled up that they needed to get spooled up, and that person walked out of the hospital. But now we have the hazmat alert. They'll know that way before we ever get there what we're bringing in. And I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you. The fire department's FY23 total budget is $77.5 million. We're proposing $85.9 million for FY24, an increase of 10.8%. The personnel accounts include 3 new FTEs, as well as a $1.7 million increase related to FRS retirement. The increase in capital is primarily due to something that Chief mentioned, that in FY23, we funded all of the fleet out of a BAR. There is some fleet in the FY24 proposed budget. The Fire MSTU supports the entirety of Fire EMS services, and the General Fund supports emergency communications. The base budget for the fire department is increasing 9.1%. That's primarily in the fire fund. The general fund, emergency communication, their operating budget is totally flat. There's 571.5 FTEs in the current budget. We're proposing an additional 3 fire inspectors for 574.5 FTEs.
And with just some budget highlights, the base budget increases, I just would like to point out that that's in the area of electricity and utilities, PPE cleaning. We've got a new company so that we can meet the NFPA standard of having it professionally, our gear professionally cleaned and inspected twice a year. Our aeroclaves, which, as you all know, we got during COVID, those have run out of warranty, so getting a service agreement for that, along with increasing the dollars that we're dedicating to sending people to paramedic school. We do have quite a bit of attrition going on, not only with just people leaving the fire service, but those that are retiring, and we're maintaining, keeping that level of paramedics that we need to continue providing the service to the citizens. The picture up here is a pump simulator. Again, trying to protect our apparatus. They're expensive. They take a long time to get here. This very neat piece of technology can simulate everything that the pump does on our fire trucks. So instead of, when we're training people, taking our fire truck to the point of something going to failure to train them, we don't have to do that anymore. We can do it all off of this piece of equipment. $100,000 is going to save us. I remember as a new firefighter watching a lieutenant completely take an engine out of service, just trying to train me on, and I didn't do it, train me on a piece of equipment that was on there with the pump. Fleet, as you know, you allowed us to buy those trucks early. You'll see in our budget that it looks like our fleet costs have gone up. That's really relative to our white fleet, non-fire trucks and rescues. That's last year we had a very minimal request with our white fleet. We're trying to replace some of that this year. Canopy for out at the Fire Training Center, that is to protect our equipment and our assets. Fire trucks, like was spoke about earlier, have $500,000 in there, and everybody keeps telling me that will be enough to accomplish what we need to out at our training center to cover the trucks. Looking not only to next year, but out into the forecast, we talked about Station 25 and 23. We also have Station 24 and 42, which we're currently working on the plans for major renovations to those stations. They're some of our oldest stations, and the capacity for those just isn't there. Station 42 in particular out of Geneva, we consider that a specialty station with airboats, tankers, trails response with ATVs. A lot of that equipment is sitting outside. side. We're going to add a bay out there, along with expanding the rest of the station for personnel. Station 28, we're currently looking for land for that out in the 417, 434 area, and also looking for land for Station 10 and Station 18, 10 out in 434 Maitland Boulevard and 18 in the Rolling Hills area. And I'll turn it back over to Tim.
Yep, that concludes the presentation.
Any questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Zembauer and Commissioner Herr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, I want to go to page 120, under Personnel Service Operations.
And while we're turning there, for the public, this page isn't in the presentation, but if you're interested, these budget details are available online. And so this is coming off of something that's not on the screen. That's what I just wanted to point out. Unless Tim's trying to get it on the screen.
He's going to pop it up.
He took that as a challenge.
He did.
I'm bringing it up now, and it is available for download online.
Great, thank you.
So my question is on Operation Personnel Services, looks like a 9.5% increase.
On page 120?
Yes.
Give an account line.
It's 120 in the PDF. It's 120 marked with like a bait stamp all the way to the right, and in the dead center of the page, it's page 118.
Got it.
I'm looking electronically, by the way.
It's not here.
It's
Page
It would be
180.
ledger line 11200.056100, Fire Rescue Operations Personnel Services.
We have it.
Good. Does this include wage increases for the next year?
Yes.
What percentage of that is going to be allocated towards the new FTEs? I know there's 3.
Right.
So that's burned into that number, correct?
Yeah, the estimated cost of the 3 FTEs is $201,500,
Okay.
and that includes overhead.
So what is the anticipated wage increase percentage that we're looking at there? If you take that number out, have you looked at that?
When you go from adopted budget to the adopted to adopted, if there's a vacant position, we do budget at the minimum. We are including the estimate for the union contract in the fire department's personnel lines.
Which is?
For the next one, it's up to 5%.
Okay.
It's 3 to 5. Much like what the county manager is trying to do, there's a 1% and 2% merit where they have to hit specific benchmarks by contract to get those extra dollars. It's been very successful. I know as far as training and documenting of the training, where that used to be like pulling teeth, that's not anymore.
And tell me about the background that went into that anticipation. Are we running into any peril with what may be going on in the Orlando MSA as far as compensation?
So we'll be coming into contract negotiations next year. It'll probably start sometime between October and January for the following October.
Right.
Again, all of that is driven by, their wage increases are driven by the collective bargaining.
No, understood, but my question is not about a contract negotiation or anything. I want to know how you arrived at these numbers. I know the current contract, but looking forward, have we considered what's actually going on for these positions throughout the region, and how that could impact us moving forward?
Well, anything beyond the year that we're talking about, that's a yes, we would consider that going in those out years. But this next year is, I wouldn't say written in stone, but it is what is dictated by the contract. And we have looked at what the averages are as far as the people getting those higher than 3%, and it's calculated into this budget.
We budget by position.
Sure.
This account includes all the overhead as well, FRS, health insurance, salaries, so we can provide more information.
And if I could.
Yeah, I think I'll take that offline.
Well, yeah, because I know where you're
That's a
getting
deeper,
at.
that's
and
a deeper
actually-
conversation that I don't want to get into here today.
And we will, I know where you're going with that, and that's say, once we get in, I know when they get into contracts, that's a whole nother thing. However, it's all a part of that process to ensure that we are competitive in the Orlando MSA or the Central Florida region. So that's one of the things. And if whatever contract gets approved this year is usually the higher one, and then everyone is trying to get to build off of it. So that will be part of our process when we look at it to ensure how we compare in the region and in the state, actually.
And just to point out with our FTEs, we currently are down 2 dispatchers, which the hiring process is going on. That just happened at the beginning of this month. We do have 1 fire inspector where we've been up for a couple of months. Chief Diaz just had interviews yesterday. And when you look at the vacant positions for firefighter, the overwhelming lion's share of that is actually for the FTs for Station 39, which is not open yet. We were anticipating that we would be further along, but we're not. So we have not filled all of those positions.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Herr?
Just a question with regard to the paramedic program. I love the sentiment that you want it to continue forever. Is it generating revenue? Are we billing for it yet?
The community paramedicine program. So we've had many discussions with a lot of different entities. No, it is not generating revenue. We hope that sometime that it will. We have not stopped. We're continuing those conversations with the hospitals. The one system that we thought we were on the precipice of having at least a beta test of a way of doing it had changes within their hierarchy, and that died off. We are continuing to bring it up. It is a great challenge finding a revenue stream other than grant funding.
I truly do believe that the revenue stream exists by billing the insurance companies for the service, by getting to becoming a contracted provider. I think there are instances of other places where that's happening. I think I have sent some information about that. It was a while ago, and it wasn't to you, Chief. I do not remember who I sent
It was to Lieutenant Halcomb, and he tried that route, and it was unsuccessful.
Yeah, I think we need to resurrect it.
I'll look at that.
That's great.
Would you like us to contact your office directly on that?
Let's work together.
You can contact his
Okay.
office
Yes,
now
he
that
can
he's
work.
here.
Perfect.
And I mean, you, here for questions, but governing, managing.
Got it.
Commissioner Delary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to say well done to all of you. And I know there's more than just the 4 of you. There's many men and women in your department that do a phenomenal job, and we all hear nothing but accolades about all of you. Recently, I had a tour of the new dispatch. Well done. If you haven't seen it, please do. It is phenomenal. So well done, whoever designed it, and with all the training. I'm amazed about how they can handle all of that chaos at the same time and still keep their sanity. It's truly amazing to see those people at dispatch do that. Community paramedicine, as you all said, Chief, I think it is a huge asset. I've seen it help people firsthand. In fact, there was an elderly individual that I know that if community paramedicine wasn't on the spot, that he would not be with us today. And so I commend them all for what your efforts on community paramedicine. 2 questions about community paramedicine is, at one point, will it ever be accredited, do you think?
So there currently is not an accreditation for that, though we are on the front end of one coming. We're hoping to be one of the first when it is, and actually have great input on the development of it. We have already been identified by many many organizations as having a model. And so we think that we're going to be one of the few that on the front end is how that accreditation is actually formed.
Great. With that, I share Commissioner Herr's sentiment about building community paramedicine. I think that's appropriate. But as she's looking at it from the insurance side, which I think is the right way to do it, we should also be contacting the emergency rooms because we're actually helping them not be overrun. And I think there is potentially some money there that can be used to help them not be overloaded at any particular time. I think we're very fortunate that not only are CAS accredited, but ISO 1, and you soon to be next year, you said an accredited department.
SIPC.
I want to make sure that as we move forward, that we don't become the training ground for other agencies, and I know that our county manager and staff will ensure us that whatever we do with the union contract, that it will be addressed. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. It is noon. When we come back at 1 o'clock, normally after our regular board meetings, we would come back for lunch at 1:30, but just to reiterate, we are coming back at 1 o'clock from our lunch break, where we'll have links, and we'll have, if you didn't have time to eat lunch, there will be popcorn in the lobby.
Popcorn?
Bringing down the popcorn machine.
Oh, that's even
So
No ice cream?
come back for popcorn. No, no ice cream, sorry. We did donuts for the morning, we'll do popcorn this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.